Okay, welcome everyone to our study session. Today, confirmation of a quorum, City Clerk.
Mayor Gilmore confirming a quorum.
Thank you. So the subject of our study session this evening is the San Jose urban villages located at Stevens Creek Boulevard, Winchester Boulevard, and Santana Row Valley Fair. Our Assistant City Manager, Ruth Shikata, will be running the show this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. At our last council meeting, we heard a petition from the United Communities for Sensible Development, who were interested in hearing a little bit more about the urban villages in the city of San Jose along the Stevens Creek corridor. So tonight, staff has prepared a presentation that provides an overview of what's happening with the urban villages, so that we can have a further discussion about impacts in Santa Clara and next steps. So with that, I'd like to call Andrew Crabtree, who's our Director of Community Development, for the presentation.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council.
Is that on? Yeah, it lights up when it's on. We have new technology here.
There you
Yeah.
go. It's on.
I'm on. All right, great.
There,
Thank
that's
you,
it.
Mayor, members of the City Council. As mentioned, I'm Andrew Crabtree, Director of Community Development. And as also mentioned, at the last City Council meeting, we received a written petition requesting that the Council take up the San Jose Urban Village planning process, specifically the Stevens Creek Urban Village, and have a discussion around that. My intent here with this presentation is to provide information to the Council as part of the study session. The petition mentioned a large number of concerns, perhaps chief amongst those were traffic, potential visual impacts from height and other issues, public facilities, the adequacy of those, the potential for the urban village development to impact public facilities in Santa Clara. Other issues mentioned were overcrowding, glare, the adequacy of the public participation process that had occurred for that, and environmental review, and some other concerns that I'm sure we'll hear more about tonight from the speakers. Just by way of background, the San Jose's general plan was adopted in November 2011. They have a major review process every 4 years. They completed one in 2016, which did make some minor changes related to the urban village And as mentioned, the urban villages are a key concept in their general plan. So this is a list of the 12 major strategies in the San Jose General Plan. We're going to focus in particular on 3 of those. The focused growth strategy, the urban villages strategy, and plan horizons. And these 3 kind of established a framework around the urban village planning process in San Jose. The other strategies also have policies that relate to this, but these are the 3 that are sort of most key to what's going on. The focused growth policy, and I recognize you can't read the specifics of this map, but this map shows overall the boundary of San Jose, and the areas that are colored, whether it be pink or blue or red, are kind of the key growth areas identified in their general plan. Their general plan is saying that for the most part into the future or the life of the general plan, that's where job and housing growth will occur. Recognizing that the city is primarily built out and that opportunities for new growth will have to occur through redevelopment of existing underutilized parcels. A lot of the plan's goal is to try to focus that growth near transit and other facilities that will support it. The urban villages talks to how this growth can occur in these focus areas, that it'll be in a more environmentally and economically healthy way for the city, sustainable way for the city, that it will also be part of a placemaking strategy. Then the horizons and periodic review strategy is similar to the phases that we have in our general plan. And it basically says of these growth areas, they're divided up into different horizons. Some were available at some of the growth areas were available at the beginning of the general plan and don't really have a horizon tied to them. And the other ones were divided into first, second, or third horizons. Unlike Santa Clara's general plan, they did not have specific years associated with them, but rather through this every 4-year review cycle, the city council there would decide if it was time to sort of move into a new horizon and make a growth area active. And this specifically applies to housing. A lot of this is around when and where housing development can occur. In general, their plan is to allow commercial industrial development to happen at any time and in many locations. The urban villages are meant to have this sort of urban form and character, mixed-use environment. These are some of the images they use when talking about those urban village areas. Some of the goals that, that they are to be designed for walking. They definitely want to include parks, plazas, paseos, and other things that support placemaking and social interaction. So the idea is not just to have density, but also have places that are active and support community life. So getting into some of the mechanics of this, one of the questions, when can an urban village develop? They're in these different horizons. So if we're in Horizon 1, a first horizon area can develop with housing, but there are some exceptions to this. One is for what are called signature projects. And so if a proposal comes forward for a particular development that meets some identified criteria in the general plan that are supposed to identify really sort of a better than normal or a really high quality project, then there's sort of an exception that can move forward ahead of having an urban village plan or the horizon in place. Also, as mentioned, commercial development can occur at any time. I know, for example, there's a hotel that's being proposed in the Stevens Creek urban village area now, so that could move forward regardless of whether or not there's an urban village plan in place, is my understanding. So the question is, why do they prepare urban village plans? One is that it's an opportunity for community stakeholder engagement. So I understand that looking at Stevens Creek, as developers were approaching the city and expressing interest in building projects there, the San Jose staff wanted to go forward with this urban village planning process as a way to try to engage with their community. It's a way to respond to the fact that there is interest from development activity and to try to have a plan in place to address that. And then another way, even if an area, it's not the horizon yet for that area, if there is an urban village plan adopted for that growth area, then residential projects can happen drawing from a pool of units of 5,000 units that were set up for those types of projects. So it's kind of another way that housing development can move forward apart from there being the horizon having been reached for that plan area. And there's a requirement, I understand, for a 0.9 floor area ratio of commercial development to be included into any projects that move forward in that way. So what is, sort of to differentiate what's in the general plan versus what's in an urban village plan, the San Jose general plan already established a total amount of development potential for an urban village, both a jobs number and a housing unit number. General plan kind of put forward some very basic parameters, including an overall height limit, and then there are various goals and policies in the general plan as well. The urban village plan then is meant to sort of take that sort of general plan and bring it down to a finer level where the community has been engaged and they've identified what their specific vision is for their neighborhood. It can provide more detailed design standards, more specific heights and setbacks and different things. And then there are a number of implementation tools that are supposed to be put into an urban village plan. There are 9 required elements. Sort of mentioned where the jobs and housing can go. They can look at the boundaries of their urban village plan, make adjustments. They're to look for specific sites for retail, maximum and minimum building heights and densities, identify potential sites for public facilities, look at infrastructure needs, some design measures, measures to minimize greenhouse gas emissions, look at affordable housing, financing tools, and phasing as a part of the village plan, all things identified. So very recently, the city of San Jose has adopted 3 urban village plans along our border there along Stevens Creek. The Santana Row Valley Fair Urban Village Plan, which is around Santana Row and Valley Fair and sort of a few surrounding properties. The Stevens Creek Urban Village Plan, which runs along the southern edge of Stevens Creek, and then the Winchester Urban Village Plan. And we've been following and to a degree participating and attending some of the meetings and so forth, all of these 3 plans. This is the Stevens Creek Urban Village Plan, land use plan that's adopted. And you can see they've sort of identified sites for neighborhood commercial, urban village commercial, and urban village, different types of uses. There are these P symbols on the map that represent potential sites for parks and plazas. This is the more detailed height limitations that were developed and adopted by San Jose. You can see ranges from 45 feet in a few locations up to 150 feet. Throughout the plan area. Bless you. And this is an example from the plan, sort of looks at circulation, mobility within the plan area. And I put this up in particular because it does show uses in Santa Clara. And there's been comments about the fact that the Parkway Park, for example, is identified in these documents, and so I wanted to acknowledge where that's coming from. And in conversations with San Jose staff, they've sort of indicated, well, their consultant was looking at context as sometimes urban designers are asked to do, and that's why it's illustrated. But their intent is that the plan would provide parks facilities of its own as well to support their uses. Just a little more on the background, the Stevens Creek Urban Village Plan was funded by a MTC grant. I mentioned it's sort of a 3-year planning process, and by that I mean that the grant was applied for in 2013, and that sort of started the process, but really the Stevens Creek Urban Village workshops and so forth took place over the last year or so. So most of the public process has been in the last year. It was adopted by the San Jose City Council on August 8th. And it's still a sort of a policy document. And in their adoption, they've noted that future development within the urban village would have significant traffic, noise, and air quality impacts, and that they would require preparation of an environmental impact report for such projects to identify the potential impacts and mitigation. They've also noted that they're in the process of developing a multimodal transportation plan, something called an area development policy that is a mechanism to look at allowing increased traffic levels than might otherwise be allowed. And they're looking at a traffic impact fee as part of that. Those are all future things that are under work and are mentioned in there when they approve the plan. And they're also looking at having a financing plan for public improvements and infrastructure. And that's another thing that's sort of an ongoing work item for the staff there. In terms of our city, as mentioned, we did attend meetings and workshops. There was a multi-jurisdictional group that was convened by San Jose that included representatives of the different cities in which we participated. And then we did attend some of the workshops as really just members of the public to understand what was going on and to hear what from whoever was there, from our community, their community, so the different issues. The city did submit comments to the city of San Jose, specifically on the adoption of this urban village plan for the Planning Commission hearing in May, the first city council hearing in June, and then just after it was adopted in August as well. And that's on the plan itself, as specific projects have been proposed in the urban village planning area or other parts of San Jose in proximity to Santa Clara. The city has also been commenting on those projects, looking at the potential impacts to traffic and so forth in Santa Clara, and looking for what types of mitigation those projects could include for those impacts. Some of the issues raised by the city of Santa Clara in our comment letters include the adequacy of the environmental review, sort of legal fulfillment of the legal requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act. We've submitted concerns about that to the city of San Jose. We've expressed and I think emphasized the desire for increased coordination and cooperation between the two jurisdictions, in particular the desire and need to work on a corridor transportation plan that would look at Stevens Creek and some of the surrounding streets and transportation facilities in that area and vicinity together. We've talked about the need for there to be projects from San Jose, contributions from San Jose projects towards those improvements, regardless of whether in San Jose or Santa Clara. We have noted the concerns we have about heights and other land use compatibility issues. And we've emphasized that we want there to be coordination prior to any approval by San Jose of specific projects. So with that, we also mentioned that we did receive one piece of correspondence, which I believe has been distributed to the council from San Jose, a letter speaking to their view on what they've done in terms of the planning process. And I would mention specifically at the end that they also say that they would like to increase our levels of working together on transportation planning. So that's in that we're in alignment, and available for questions at this point.
Thank you for that presentation, and we do have some questions up here. Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks. My questions are on these building heights. So the maximum building height on any of these urban village things was 250 feet. How many stories is that, generally speaking?
Probably 20, 21, 22 in that neighborhood.
And none of those are along this area of Stevens Creek. The maximum I see is 150. So how many stories is that?
Yeah, at most you could maybe 15.
15 stories.
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the architecture, what's ground floor, retail or not.
And that 150 feet is just a little west of San Tomas Expressway. What's on our side of Stevens Creek, on the other side of Stevens Creek? I mean, I know what's there now. I should reframe that. What would we plan to put on our side of Stevens Creek in that area?
Well, as our general plan is today, it supports sort of 3 to 5 stories in terms of development. So, yeah, you have potentially 15 to 5, 10-story difference.
Do you know the height of any of San Jose's downtown buildings? I know that was one of the other areas of urban village planning.
Right. Yeah, I think the tallest buildings in downtown San Jose are around 235 feet, 200, a little over 200, and they're limited by...
So there might be 20-story buildings downtown?
I think the tallest is 17 or 18 stories. I'm not
Yeah, that's right.
exactly
There's
sure,
the Knight Ridder building, I think, was 19. Okay.
19, yeah.
So how do we, I mean, even at 120 feet, you're saying that that could be roughly 12 stories if you got 10-foot.
And I was giving you residential buildings, which tend to have a little bit lower floor to ceiling height. So those are the maximum number of stories. You could have a building the same height with fewer stories, particularly if it were commercial.
But to put it in context so that people understand what that means, because you say 150 feet, well, that doesn't really mean a lot. If you say 10 stories,
Or more.
or
right.
more, 12 stories, 15 stories, I mean, that's really, really high. And what can we do about that? Because I can't see that being compatible with, well, even with the neighborhoods behind them, because that's San Jose's area, those are a lot of single-family dwellings, but not compatible certainly with even what we would allow on our side of Stevens Creek to remain somewhat compatible to the single-family neighborhoods that are behind our area of Stevens Creek.
Right. So the question is, what can we do about it? Yeah. Well, I would say that our best opportunity is when there are specific projects that we can look at the potential impacts of those projects, and we can participate, and certainly our residents do as well, in their planning processes and speak to concerns about whether it be visual impacts or privacy impacts or shade impacts or whatever it is related to the building height. We can speak to those, and like any planning process, it's ultimately up to their city council what they approve or not approve, but they may listen to those concerns. We can continue to comment on the environmental review and where we think there's grounds for an environmental impact that we can identify. We can raise that and potentially, as you're aware, either through the hearing process or ultimately through a legal process if we think there's grounds for that.
Just one follow-up. Because we are learning that EIR challenges don't really change anything. I mean, you might be right about the process of the EIR being flawed or need improvement or something, but all they do is change the EIR. They don't change the plans. So do we have any mechanism for forming a joint task force for planning these corridors that we share to enter into something that's maybe more cooperative, that we can involve all of our city councils and all of our residents on both sides of these corridors to sort of plan more? I mean, I understand the need for these higher density developments. I understand the need for more affordable housing, and this is one way to achieve some of that. I understand the need for, the future and these, high transportation corridors and urban villages. It's such a cliche, but for lack of a better term. But we don't seem to plan them together, because from the public's eye, Stevens Creek, I mean, you have that corridor there, and it should be balanced on both sides. So how do we cooperate with our neighboring city to make sure that both sides of these corridors, they're going to be canyons, work together? Stevens Creek is a prime example, and it's crucial, it's critical. And when we share this, it's
Well, I think there may be an opportunity for some sort of, certainly at least dialogue, if not process, through what you mentioned at a political level with, your counterparts in San Jose. And I suspect they would be open to that. And there certainly are conversations going on at a staff level, but ultimately we need to perhaps, that higher level direction to help us understand where we're going. And I guess I would mention in 2013, when San Jose was sort of initiating this process, there was some conversation, but at that point, we in Santa Clara were very focused on needing to plan our growth areas, our Lawrence Station area plan, and so forth. And so, it's a question of where do we, what's our need and priority, but clearly this is something that we're going to be paying more attention to now and going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Caserta.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For you or Assistant City Attorney, and also, Assistant City Manager, City Attorney, can you tell me, I think all development has to work for the existing neighborhoods. I've heard a mixed bag here. I've heard that it's been transparent, accessible, and I've heard that it has not been. So can you comment from your expertise on what San Jose has done to reach out to the contiguous neighbors, San Jose, Cupertino, Santa Clara?
Sure. Well, from my own observation, San Jose conducted a number of workshops in which they did invite people in San Jose, Santa Clara, Cupertino, based on sort of the typical noticing distances. And when I did when we did attend workshops, and I attended one, there were definitely residents from the other cities there that participated. And there was no sort of bifurcation of San Jose residents and other residents from that process. So, there was some opportunity, and attending the hearings, as you know, some of the folks here tonight, represent a small number, I think, of the people overall that went and spoke at these hearings, and there was clearly, a lot of community concern, and there were also people who spoke on the other side of issues, and we did, in that process, I did hear from some of the participants in their sort of steering group, community group that they had as well. So, there's a mix of opinions. I think that San Jose conducted a process where they were trying to get that input and respond to it underneath sort of the overarching vision that they've already established, right, of doing this kind of density and providing this kind of development intensity. So they already had that kind of objective, but then they went ahead and tried to look for opportunities to fine-tune the plan to a degree. But certainly there's discontent, that's why we're here, from some residents about how that turned out.
And then, Ms. Shikata, kind of a menu of options. What is our best course of action if we want, to have a seat at the table and address some of the anxieties of our constituents and neighbors in San Jose, Cupertino can you give me kind of a menu from litigation to just simply reaching out to Councilmember Chappie Jones's office, et cetera? Can you kind of give me a couple courses of action that we could look at?
Sure. I won't address specifically the litigation matter. I'll leave that to the assistant or to the city attorney. But certainly that there are plenty of opportunities to work collaboratively with the city of San Jose as they're continuing to move forward in the planning of Stevens Creek Boulevard. We can do that certainly always engage our residents, but we can engage at the staff level as well. In addition, prior to this meeting at the council's direction, I did reach out to the council member for this district, District 1, Chappie Jones's office, as well as the mayor's office in San Jose, and they too want to make sure that Santa Clara and San Jose work collaboratively as possible on a moving forward basis. So I think that there's opportunities at all levels to work together to address the issues. One of the things that we probably should look at here in Santa Clara is deciding from a priority basis, what is it that we want from the plan, what is it that we want on Stevens Creek Boulevard, and what is it, and how do we best protect our neighborhoods?
Good, and just to echo what Councilmember Mann says, I think moving forward a proactive instead of reactive nature, I think is a good policy. Thank you.
Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, for the very interesting presentation. And I did have a chance this afternoon to look through the fairly detailed package that was sent to us by City Manager Norberto Duenas from the City of San Jose, and I appreciate his providing the information. And, some of what he had to say referred back to different kind of almost planning modalities and agreements that we entered into or actions that were taken by the City Council in Santa Clara, say like in 2003, I think one of the reports referenced. These are maybe more comments than questions, but so my sense was that I don't think that we're saying that we don't agree to what we said in 2003. I think what we're saying is we want to make sure that everybody's really going to stick to having the good planning practices. And, I know that San Jose has started, they had some of their meetings and everything, but, to really make sure that we're going to work collaboratively, because one of the things, and a number of people have heard me talk about the plan that was jointly worked on with VTA, the City of San Jose, and the City of Santa Clara for the Santa Clara Station area. And as far as, and I always thought that when I got on the Planning Commission and read that document, I thought that was a really good document, a really good approach. And what I could see, though, is it didn't seem like anybody really followed that. It seemed like everybody went off and did their own thing. And a lot of the things that were called for in that plan, like I think in our portion in Santa Clara, we're still going to try to implement it, but it didn't seem like it ended up so it's like great to, we all talk about you put together these plans and you stick them up on the shelf or whatever, or file it away on your hard drive and no one ever looks at it again. So one of the things that maybe you if you have any insight into, because I know one of the concepts that's gotten kind of bandied about and has raised some concern is this notion of the protected intersections. And I did, as I said, I read the memo that came through from City Manager Duenas. And I don't know if you have any insight into that process, because my concerns is that if an intersection has been designated as protected, that it may be that it just basically ends up that nothing's going to happen. Rather, I think what some of us in our discussions with representatives that we've talked to, I've had meetings with Chappie Jones and some of his staff, is that we need to do something a little more bold. I mean, some of this stuff is very bold. And, doing what we've done in the past, which is add a left-hand turn lane, or, some of those kinds of things, based on, I think, the conditions that we've all seen on Stevens Creek Boulevard, that is just not going to really make a dent. And I think that we got reminded earlier today, this is Silicon Valley. We should be on the cutting edge of doing things on a larger scale, besides just building buildings that are large, is like figuring out how we're going to move the people in those buildings. So that's a kind of a convoluted way of saying, have you had any exposure or discussion about the concept of the protected intersections?
Yes, yeah, I can explain on that a little bit. And the intent there is you're, again, probably familiar, traditionally, when we've done analysis of new development, we look at the potential impacts on traffic level of service. And level of service is a metric that really just looks at intersections and the number of cars that can go through an intersection in time. So if a project, in doing its analysis, said, oh, it's going to impact that intersection by causing too much delay, a common solution would be to add another left turn pocket, and then, or a right turn pocket in some situations. And then by doing so, you would do the math again and the problem would go away. So the outcome would be increasingly wider and wider intersections with more turn pockets, and traffic could flow more quickly through the intersection as a result. But there were instances where the community would say, well, we don't really want this intersection to get any wider because you'd have to knock down buildings or whatever. And then, at that point, you really have two alternatives. You could either say, okay, the development can't occur because it causes the impact and we're not willing to mitigate it, or the development can occur, but we're okay with changing the rules. And so protected intersections was a way to change the rules to say, we'll allow the development to occur, and rather than put in another turn lane, we'll try to capture what the developer would have spent to do that and put it into other kinds of improvements, whether it be bicycle or pedestrian facilities. And I'm not prepared tonight to speak to how effectively that's been implemented in San Jose. I don't know whether or not they've been able to get lots of money to go out and do bicycle and pedestrian improvements or not. But I could try to get that information for the council as follow-up. And then I would say, just kind of philosophically, I think the key thing behind all of this is sort of, what is our vision? What do we want? Do we want Stevens Creek to be wider or not? Do we want to allow taller buildings or not? Those are sort of the things you have to decide. And then if you know where you're trying to go in terms of improvements that we're looking for, then I think that's a good place to start having those conversations, those negotiations, to say, these are, this is where we want a bicycle facility, this is where we, or whatever it might be, if we go that route.
And I think it's the time to really get serious about talking about alternatives to single drivers in cars. And some of my concerns, there's a memo that the city manager Duenas references about that I signed on to with representatives from Cupertino and the city of San Jose asking VTA to do more studies. And what I had communicated was it wasn't not just to be, additional intersection changes, it was to really to look at things, because in a larger context, in this community, we authorized a sales tax, and we're going to be spending, billions of dollars, and we have BART that's going to be opening sometime next year. And, part of the whole, when you look at the complete plan, it requires being able to move people fairly quickly from the west side of the valley, probably through this corridor, through, Valley Fair, which really, at this point, has a lot more, people visiting it every day than downtown San Jose. I know San Jose wants to see that change. But if you're going to get people through Valley Fair, to the San Jose Airport, to Diridon Station, to Milpitas BART and all that, if this isn't working right, it messes up that entire plan and all the work that's being done for the VTA Next network and some of the other projects that are in the, on the list of projects that were approved for Measure B. It's going to be much more problematic if those, that those projects will actually be successful and effective. And, so, part of what I want to see us do here is really look at doing the things that we talked about in 2003. And I'm glad that San Jose is, remembers those commitments and the VTA design manual. And I'm like, yay, yeah, let's really do that. And make sure that, I think we've all felt the pain of, we've done the building developments first, and then we've tried to figure out what's going to happen with the traffic next. And, right now, I know in Santa Clara, there's a little, I think a fair amount of concern about what's, as the Apple Park campus becomes more occupied, considering that, listening to our friends in Cupertino, as they were quoted in the paper today, they're going to be like kind of calling upon us in Santa Clara to use our toolbox, as I said, to figure out how are we going to fix whatever impacts we may have in our city. And I think there's a grand total of $750,000. So once again, it's kind of like, grand total. Except they're paying like $15,000 per chair for the theater. They spent more, but they're going to willing to spend more money on 2 rows of chairs than they are for all the traffic mitigations. So I kind of see that as an example of there should have been a lot more thought putting up front to that campus being built. And now afterwards, we're going to figure out what to do. And so I just want us all to be, highly cognizant of all the, and be creative and look at what are we going to do so that all these other transportation plans that we have a chance to succeed. And that's some of my big part of my concerns right now.
Thank you. Councilmember Davis?
This is my neighborhood. This is in my backyard. And basically, when I met with Chappie Jones, he said that this was going to be approved and there wasn't really a whole lot that we could do about it. And I was a little dismayed to hear that. And because we didn't come to the table and actually take a real hardcore look at this. And to echo what Councilmember O'Neill has said, these heights are massive and the traffic mitigation was never even thought. That should have been the first plan. And then maybe you can think about this plan. But it's in a reverse right now, and I feel bad for these people. I don't know who said this, but there was a neighbor that said, I'm not a NIMBY, this is in my front yard. I'm looking at this. So I can feel their pain. I know they're worried about what's gonna happen because when Pete Constant had that part, he put up a hawk that Dennis Nang put together because of all the traffic that was happening just at the Valley Fair. People in that neighborhood on San Jose side and Santa Clara were complaining that at Christmas time, it was a nightmare. Now you're gonna drop this on them? This is like, where are these people gonna go? So I really believe that we have to get this to the table. We have to be a stakeholder in this. They should have been constant. I know that this happened in 2011, but when I got that email today that said they're basing their laurels on a 2003 traffic mitigation, like Teresa was also referring to, that's 14 years ago. So I'm really concerned that we have to look at the people that live here, the impact that's gonna happen. Apple is putting in 1,000 people a week. to build up to their 14,000 people. That's impacting our people on Prune Ridge, on the other side of Lawrence Expressway. So that whole area there is just, to me, is gonna be, I think you could walk faster. They'd have to take the cars off the road, because it would be ridiculous to even conceive that we would have that. And when, and I agree with Councilmember Mahan, when you put 45 feet, 65 feet, 85 feet, you need to put a story level with that, because I don't think that people understand how tall this really is. This is New York City. This is really high density housing, and it really will obstruct the skyline because it's gonna look like a tunnel. And I know the mayor has said this over and over again. This is Tahoe, this is California. There's a huge difference in height levels there. So I don't know how, if we don't have this open dialogue with the city of San Jose and our neighbors and anybody, I think the stakeholders need to come together on this. I know it's been approved, but maybe there's a way to start talking about how we're gonna look at the impact. And I understand this signature village thing kind of was going off, and these protected intersections. So we need to figure this out. I don't think left-hand turns, or I think we need to look at it holistically, and we should have been a player in this because it affects our city. It's on our border. We split that street half and half. I mean, do we have to build a wall down the middle of Stevens Creek and say, here's Santa Clara, here's San Jose? I mean, I don't think that's effective, but I think there's a few neighbors out there that would love to do that, because their fear is that all of that traffic is gonna come into their neighborhoods, and what are they gonna do? So I think going forward, can we really get the studies together? Let's see if we can have some open and healthy dialogue as to how we're gonna fix this, because I don't really see this, the fighting is gonna go back and forth. These neighbors are not happy. I'm sure the neighbors in San Jose aren't real happy either, because they're losing a lot of, they're losing Harry's Hop Row. I don't think they're happy about that idea. There's a lot of people go to that. So there's things that are going to be impacted and changed dramatically. And I would really like to see an open dialogue. So if you're looking for suggestions or whatever, I think we need to put our heads together. We need to get those council members together. We need to get the traffic people together. We need to get the neighbors. What is the best way that we can work on this project? And if this has to rise to the top, it might have to rise to the top. I think that's why we do specific plans, because we take it holistically, not band-aiding things here and there. And that, to me, is a major impact on our city. Huge. So I wasn't real happy about it. I wasn't happy how it was done, or how people kind of had a very cavalier attitude towards it. So going forward, I think we need to have those conversations, and we need to have them now. And thank you to the people that brought this to our attention, because I know you live in my neighborhood and it's really scary. But I think if we start getting a little bit progressive with this, we can find some kind of compromise or change or something that will help everybody together. So those are my comments. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Andrew. I have a question. You mentioned implementation tools. What are implementation tools?
Right. So these are things that are identified in their general plan that they would, let's see, there we go, there we go. So that would speak to how do you collect money. So it could be like a area development fee, some kind of community development fee or something like that, where different development pays into it that then goes to a fund improvements or something like that. So that's an example of a tool. It's basically another ordinance or a policy that's adopted after the plan to help make the plan occur the way it's supposed to.
Okay, so basically fees to help.
It could be a fee, it could be an ordinance of some sort, it could be different things like that. But I think the main goal here was a financing plan. So it's
Right.
how are we going to assess funds from new development to pay for the plan, or if you want to park here, how do you make sure that's not the one site that never developed? Everyone goes everywhere else, right? And you never get to park. So how do you share the burden of providing those kinds of improvements over multiple developments and make sure they happen?
Okay, and have we received any kind of a timeline at this point or proposed?
Well, the short answer is no, and if I understand what you're saying, the plan's adopted, so in theory, they could start implementing it any day. There are some projects that as projects come in, they do refer those to us, so we're aware of 3, 4 different projects that are in that area, but I don't know the timing of when any of those are proposed to go to hearing.
Because I understood there were some financing concerns, or I mean, it wasn't in place, I should say.
Right, the financing plan, no. As mentioned in their staff report, that's still under development, and I don't think they've really worked out the terms of it yet. I haven't seen anything publicly.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I had met with Councilmember Chappie Jones earlier this year. He and 2 of his staff members actually asked to meet with me as well, and we met here at City Hall. And I raised a lot of these concerns that have been brought up here tonight, and about the height and the shade that you referred to in your presentation, and the impact that will have on, the Santa Clara side of Stevens Creek. So I mean, he heard what I had to say, but he was, I asked about, meeting with the stakeholders, and he definitely was open to setting up a task force to meet with, the stakeholders, city council members, just everybody that, would definitely need to be at the table. So I was glad to hear that he was open to that dialogue, and also discussing the transit corridor along Stevens Creek. We talked about the bus, improving the VTA bus system, and I said, well, is there a bus depot? Anything, if you're going to put in a bus, a bus line or a regular bus line, is there a bus depot? And he said no, but he said, that was one of the things that he had hoped to establish, and so it sounds like, they have plans, but I totally agree, with, I think the majority of the council here has expressed the fact that, we do need to talk. We need to protect the rights of our city. We need to protect the rights of our residents. And the only way to do that is to have an open dialogue. So I definitely support that idea, and whatever it is we need to do to start the discussion, I'm all for it, and happy to, be out there and support our city in whatever way I can, and the residents in the neighborhood as well. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. I have just a couple questions before we go to the public. I want to make sure we have time for the public here. And I'll make my comments later. So Andrew, can commercial development occur anytime along Stevens Creek Boulevard?
Yes, that's the intent. There are a few sites that are general plan residential, regardless of whether it's an urban village or not. But for the most part, all of their triggers or prerequisites are tied to residential development.
So would it go through the regular public hearing process? And when would Santa Clara be able to weigh in with either input or legal action if necessary?
Right. So it would go through their public hearing process. In many cases, commercial development can be approved at a staff level in San Jose, sometimes Planning Commission, occasionally Council. So, we receive notices of that. We receive notices of any environmental review that they do for those projects, and we can comment on those as well. And then, once there's an action taken by San Jose, then there's an opportunity to pursue legal action if we think that's a necessary step.
So you said they can approve a project at a staff level?
They have called a director's hearing, which is a public hearing, but it's before the planning director. Right. So under their zoning code, some commercial uses are permitted by right, or if it's a new building, it's just a staff level approval.
So I'm just taking an example, one of these signature projects like Saratoga and Stevens Creek, would they be able to approve that project at a staff level?
That's a mixed use project. It has a residential towers in it. So anything that's a mixed use has a residential.
Anything that has a residential component, no, but they
no.
could move ahead with office or retail?
Just the office building, just a retail building, yes.
Okay. And so when would Santa Clara be able to weigh in?
Well, they refer projects over to us early in their process. So, when a new application comes in, they notify us, and we can comment at that point. If they do an environmental review process that has a public notification, we have an opportunity to comment on that. And then even if it's a staff level approval, it's still a public hearing process that the city can comment on.
So would any of these projects be able to go forward on Stevens Creek Boulevard in the urban village plan without an environmental review process?
Well, no. There always has to, it's all subject to CEQA review. What you've seen in this urban village plan adoption is that they relied on an earlier environmental impact report that was prepared for the general plan. And that's not uncommon for this kind of thing. But any new office building will have to, or commercial development or residential development, will need an environmental review process, whether it's an EIR or a negative declaration. That depends on the process that determines what level of impact it has. But it's all subject to state law.
So Santa Clara would have an opportunity at that point to weigh in,
Yes,
however way we decide to weigh in.
Right, and we've been doing that. We've been commenting on the earlier stages of the environmental review process, notice of preparation for an EIR. Although there's no document yet to review, we've already been putting in comments. When an EIR comes out, we review it, or a negative declaration comes out, we review it, and we've been submitting comments.
And what is our assurance that if they are approving something at a staff level that we will be able to know, or our public in Santa Clara would be able to know that they're doing this?
Right. Well, I will say that they have been referring projects to us, but it's also, I've been proactively going to their website and trying to track what's going on there as well. So that's what, it depends on us, I suppose, to pay attention. Ultimately, if we know of a project, we can formally request to receive notices on that project, but as new projects come in, again, I have no reason to imply that they're not doing a good job of referring, but just to do my own diligence, follow as well.
Okay, those are just my questions for now. So I'm going to go ahead. I don't see any other lights. Thank you, Andrew. I'm sure you might be needed back, so if you want to stay close. I'm going to start with the cards here for our public, because I know we're running out of time. I have Steve Kelly first, and then Marge, is it Faucher? Faucher next after that. Good evening.
Good evening. Mayor Gilmore, council members, I had the opportunity to work on the commission and saw other Santa Clara residents come, as well as Cupertino residents. The Stevens Creek Urban Village is a great idea as part of San Jose's general plan. It is a result of huge success of Santana Row, as well as developments on both Cupertino and in Santa Clara along Stevens Creek. It will bring jobs, housing, and retail together along a major traffic corridor. It will reduce air pollution by reducing the average miles traveled and trips generated by residents living in these new communities. Many young people, like my son, are looking for modern urban villages as described in San Jose's plan. I would ask Santa Clara, San Jose, and Cupertino to work together on this and address the main concerns that were in the meetings: traffic, affordable housing, and building heights. Finally, Santa Clara County is projected to increase its resident population by 350,000 by 2030. We can no longer just grow out. We are built out. We need to grow upward, since we really don't have any other options at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Marge, and then Deborah Bress after that. Good evening.
Good evening. Council, Mayor, I'm Marge Faucher. I've lived in Santa Clara for 50 years, and I want to address quality of life or lack thereof. I have attended the workshops, some of the workshops they had at Cypress Center for these urban villages. They really asked for input, but they didn't use it more times than not. They said they planned plazas, not parks. A plaza would be a strip of land between two high buildings, and residents are going to want parks, and the nearest parks are going to be in Santa Clara, which means overcrowding and unfunded. They also said they plan purposely not to have enough parking with these high rises. They are assuming that people would be biking or working close to home. They plan to close Lopino Way. That's a highly parked area in San Jose. They didn't mention that there's no close by fire department for these high rises. The nearest ones are in Santa Clara. That means their firemen have to be trained for special high-rise use. There are no plans for the overcrowded schools. I live in the area that we have Cupertino School District. The nearest school, Eisenhower, already has 15 portables. The real elephant in the room is mass transit, or lack thereof, and planning, lack thereof. San Jose has planned for BART and for high rises of under the 120 feet would be in my area. These areas are less in height and will be around the BART area. Here we are in San Jose, Stevens Creek, between Saratoga Avenue and Lawrence Expressway, with planning to have 120 to 150 feet heights. That is ridiculous when there's no transit planned at all. All we have is, oh, my time is up. I'm hoping that you, city council members, will take the leadership in this, play hardball with them if you have to. We have got to have this taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Deborah Bress, and then some more cards coming. Randy.
Can you adjust
Shinge
that to 3
after that?
minutes too, please? Can you adjust that to 3 minutes for this being a study session? That's what I was told yesterday we got in these
Is it
types of
3
meetings.
or 2 for a study session? 2 minutes, so we have to go.
I was
'cause
told we would get
if you
more
can-
because this is a study session, and I was told that yesterday at the governance
That was
meeting.
incorrect information. It's 2.
Well, I was told yesterday at the governance meeting we would get more time.
All right, we'll get a clarification on that for the future.
I'm just trying to find his slide on transportation. Okay.
There it is. Thank
The
you.
presentation that we just heard from the planning department, or whatever we call it this week, was riddled with all kinds of half-truths and absolute errors. They may get the information, but then they do nothing with it. The Apple project is a prime example. This morning was the absolute largest CF I've ever seen. In fact, we need to come up with a term larger than that, because it was. They did everything wrong. And it's a great example with Santa Clara dropping the ball and the residents having to carry the water and deal with the problems. We are going to have that problem with this project. Please, dear God, let's not do it again. If someone can't figure out what 120 feet is and how many stories that is, and they're having something to do with building, fire their ass, because they're in the wrong department.
Deborah, please just stay on the subject, please.
That is the subject. If you can't
Please,
equal
Deborah.
numbers to stories, thank you. 120 feet for people to recognize is about the height of the stadium, so people can get an understanding of how tall that is to visualize with something. So it's called pretty damn big. So look at this map. All the streets they want to use are our streets. Now you want to come out of the wake up and come out of your coma? You've got a planning person who went to one meeting. I want to know what he was picking at the meeting, because he sure as hell wasn't participating.
Deborah, please stay on the subject.
I am on the subject. The Meridian Quad is scheduled to be 85 to 120. And someone who happens to be on the planning commission is already sucking up to the developer who's doing that project. And that's going to be a signature project. So watch which body orifice we get that stuffed into. Am I upset? You're damn right I am, because our city council and our staff keeps letting us down. Amen, Teresa, that you're finally saying we need to pay attention. But I hope the horse is not out of the barn, slaughtered, and somebody
Deborah.
ate it for hamburger meat.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. Please do something and do it now. We
Thank you.
can't stand to keep waiting.
Randy, and then Naomi. It's Makahorn Hara. I'm sorry, I can't read it. Makahara, thank you. Randy.
Okay, hi, everybody. I live in San Jose, My son went to Eisenhower. The 3 urban villages were originally in Horizon 3, and in the plan that San Jose made a long time ago. And so what they did is they approved the 3 urban village plans, but they left the areas in Horizon 3, okay? And in order to get around the thing about having an approved plan, they said, okay, we're going to let residential be allocated from the citywide pool and not from the allocation that each urban village gets. So the thing that's really hard for me to understand is why were they in such a hurry to approve this plan if they're going to leave the urban villages in Horizon 3? And the city never gave a good explanation for that. They said stuff about, well, it'll allow us to plan for stuff. Well, why approve a plan that's incomplete? And why be so insistent on approving a plan that's incomplete? It just makes no sense. And on top of all that, the 2 signature projects that are in process right now are allowed an indeterminate amount of time to complete. Originally, they were given a year after the urban village plan was approved to complete. Now they're given an indeterminate amount of time. So they're going to proceed with their own set of rules and not with the urban village plan rules. All of this stuff really speaks to a lack of planning and disingenuousness on the part of the city of San Jose. I'm a San Jose resident, and I can see it. Oh, and the last thing is, the urban village plan should have been noticed to 1,000 feet, and they were only noticed to 500 feet. And that came up in the city council meeting, and staff's comment to that was, well, we only did 500 feet.
Thank you. Naomi, and then Chris Becker after that. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Naomi Makihara. I live in San Jose, and I've gone to several advisory meetings, and city council for San Jose. And we did tell, as a resident, we did tell the planning people that they have to consider traffic. They also have to consider the residents in also Santa Clara and Cupertino. Did they care? No. They just didn't care. They didn't care about the traffic, what it would cause to the residents or to the other cities. It just seems to me that they were only caring about what they can get as, profit or money for their, city chest. And I think it's appalling that certain people say certain things that are not true. That's what's so appalling, that, we've gone to these meetings, we've talked to them, they don't listen. It's just like, we don't matter. And you don't matter either to them. Or Cupertino doesn't matter to them. That's what I find, Ricardo always says, well, we want to make San Jose great. They don't. They don't want to make the community great. They don't care about the people. Even with the suggestions, they say, too bad. So I find that rather appalling for the city of San Jose.
Thank you. Okay, if we can keep it down. Chris Becker and then Robert Mayer.
Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'll try to say this in the simplest way I can. The plans I see are out of scale for the neighborhood, and they're out of scale for the infrastructure. And they're also out of bounds with regard to the community, in the sense that this is not just buildings, because people move in and out of buildings. Cars move in and out of buildings. So these are sort of breathing, if you will, structures, and they impact more than just the actual physical dimensions of the buildings themselves, and obvious, right? So this is a good example, this map, and you can see other maps. So because this is a project that actually directly impacts Santa Clara, it seems, I mean, I don't know if it's illegal, immoral, improper, I don't know what the right word is, but how can you do something that directly impacts your neighbor and then ignore them? So I think that's a fundamental issue. I don't know that there's really legal precedent in the state for how cities work with each other or don't, but it seems like that's the fundamental issue. If you build something right on the border and cars and people are moving across the border, you have to recognize that in some way. And so that's really a fundamental problem with this plan, because so far it doesn't seem as though San Jose has done that. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, and then Judy Algas after that. Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me speak here. I completely agree with what Randy was saying before. You know, we are pretty much being ignored here. I live actually 600 feet away from Stevens Creek. So obviously I didn't get a notice because I'm beyond 500 feet. If you calculate the width of Stevens Creek and then the stores, there's like nobody getting notifications. That's the first point. Second point is, I feel like we only get lip service from San Jose. They tell us, okay, let's have some meetings, let them feel good, and then we just do whatever we wanted to do in the first place. Same thing happens probably with the great plan on how we can add more traffic. So basically, you come up with a plan, and now we can build the buildings because we have some plan that is supposedly going to accommodate all the traffic. Well, I'm sure it's not going to happen. The other thing is, supposedly we were at these meetings with San Jose, and if there was some recognition on what our concerns were from our city, then what was the plan before? Did we have 250 feet buildings on Stevens Creek? Is this the compromise that we got from San Jose? It seems like nothing is happening. It was also confirmed that this is basically just a cookie cutter thing where we take what we have, where we have BART stations and where we already have high density development. We take the same principle and put it right on Stevens Creek where we have all these low density housings. It's not going to work. We don't have a BART. Just putting in some additional buses is not going to help. 280 is on the Stevens Creek side. Where do you think traffic is going to go? It's not going to the Stevens Creek side. All the people are going to drive to San Jose and Santa Clara and Cupertino. So we need some real force here to get some collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy, and then Curtis Kent.
Hello, Council.
Welcome.
I just want to say thank you again. I brought some slides because we keep discussing and discussing, and I just want to deal with facts. So the first slide I have, do you have it there? Oh, okay. So if you, does it go on the screen? No? Oh, really? We don't have that? Oh, okay, that's perfect. Okay.
Could we restart her time also, as soon as we all get the, it's just one?
It's 1, 2, 3 pictures. I just want to show you
Oh,
facts,
okay.
basically.
Go ahead.
Okay, so if you look at the first picture, you'll see that San Jose is just doing a small little adjustment on Stevens Creek. And you can see on the second picture how far back the traffic is, because this is my commute, my daily commute. So, and then the third is you can see that even a green light, it doesn't matter. We're still sitting there. The lights are meaningless now, and this is just a taste of what is really going to happen. So I have to avoid this exit now, and I have to go farther back and go all the way around. And on top of that, Apple is closing off their street too, because a lot of us are going through their development, so to speak, to avoid the traffic. So these are facts. I mean, that's just really what I want to show you. We can talk all we want about the studies, but this is the reality. It's taking 30 more minutes, and that's if you cross the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Curtis, and then Stephen Scharf.
Hi,
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Curtis. I'm the person who submitted the petition. Thank you very much for your time on this. So since it's 2 minutes, I'll be quick. Post hoc environmental analysis of the urban village plans violates CEQA guidelines 15003, subsection H. I will read that to you now. The lead agency must consider the whole of the action, not simply its constituent parts, when determining whether it will have a significant environmental impact. This is known as piecemeal. Keep the piecemeal in mind when I tell you the second part. Mayor Sam Lucardi, Chappie Jones, and Deb Davis last month in August publicly announced to the media that a developer who comes to them with plans that have additional public amenities can increase the density and the heights of these projects on its own, which means that today, no one in the public and no one in the council knows what the final plans will be, what the final densities, what the final traffic, what the final heights will be. And you will have people come up here and parade in front of you telling you that they've done public outreach for the past 3 years or 1 year, and it's not true because nothing is finalized yet. That's a problem. The next one to consider is that a lot of the projects on Stevens Creek Urban Village will be commercial, which means that includes hotels. You can come in with hotels up and down Stevens Creek, and that has its own problems. What else can I cover? I think that's pretty much it. I think I'll leave it alone from there. Again, thank you for considering my petition. I think that the only outcome that we have available to us, considering that Chappie Jones told, I'm sorry, Deb, that
I'm the other Davis.
yeah, yes.
Deb,
Sorry.
not Dev.
Yeah.
I'm Debbie.
It gets you all confused.
Not Deb.
You get enough council meetings, you all look alike. So.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyway, my point is that I think our only alternative, because Chappie Jones said that the train has left the station or is already approved, we have to do the lawsuit. So I'm requesting the council consider doing a lawsuit against the city of San Jose to stop this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stephen Scharf, welcome to Santa Clara.
Thank you. I'm speaking for myself tonight, not as part of the council. So I've met with Chappie Jones in the past too. I've been to the San Jose City Council meetings, and Chappie's a great guy, but at the meetings you can see he's reading from the same list of developer-provided talking points that we saw someone else reading from here tonight. They will offer to meet with you and collaborate and team across functional boundaries to create a new paradigm or whatever it is, but they really have no intention of doing any of that. They talk about transit on Stevens Creek. You know, a bus is what we all want someone else to take so we can drive our cars and not have more congestion. But the reality is no one is taking the VTA buses. Light rail maybe, Caltrain definitely, but unless they're gonna put light rail up Stevens Creek and El Camino, there just will be no mass transit. Someone else mentioned, well, everyone's gonna live, work, play, shop, do whatever in this urban village. It never works that way. When HP was at the Apple site, there were almost 10,000 people. They all drove to work. Now with Apple, there'll be 13,000 people. And they do have a bus system now, which is something, but there'll still be a lot of traffic at that site. You know, we don't have to, someone else said, well, we have no place to go but up. We have no alternative but to build up. But there is an alternative. If you listen to Ro Khanna or Joe Simidian, they've all said the same thing. We don't need to put every single job in the world in Silicon Valley. And yet San Jose seems to think that that's a great idea. And now they're applying for the Amazon second campus, 40,000 more people. And they say, we don't want to put it in Coyote Valley. You know, it needs to be in the center. Where are those people going to live and how are they going to get to work? They don't think about it. They don't care. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one clarification. Councilmember O'Neill did ride her bike to HP when she worked there. Just to let you know that for the record.
You. And I've taken Caltrain to work and ridden my bike to Fremont, so thank you.
Takahide Nishio, and then Muti Malahandatla. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Takahide Nishio. I'm a San Jose resident. I think I have a lot of concern about Stevens Creek Urban Village Plan. it's going to be a lot of impact on the local residents for the height, the traffic, everything. It's going to be drastically changes our environment. Right now, we are facing only like up to 4-story buildings. That's maximum. The just neighbor of neighboring area is just only a 2-story building in the background of my house. And now they are trying to build 6, 7, or even 10-story high building. And that's going to be impacting also to Santa Clara because it's just across the street of Stevens Creek. And I showed lots of concerns to the San Jose, but they don't listen. We local residents have also have a chance to talk with Chappie Jones directly, but eventually he just sympathized us, and they didn't do anything on it. And now it's a time for the Santa Clara residents to stand up, actually, because that's not only the San Jose's issue. It's surrounding neighbors have a great impact. It's going to be really drastically changing. And I hope, that Santa Clara will stand up and something to do on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then Muni, please come forward. And then I don't have any cards after that. If you want to speak, you have to just please line up. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries.
Just 1 second. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, Muni.
By the way, I'm not representing 49ers, so I know you guys have something going with them. Okay, so good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I'm Muni Madipatla. I'm a Cupertino resident. First of all, as a neighbor, I'm proud of what you're doing, listening to your residents and caring for their concerns. That's very important. I'm really proud of you guys. Our suburban cities do not have infrastructure to handle these high rises. This is not New York, this is not San Francisco, this is not Chicago. This is, our city that's, suburban cities. Right? If San Jose wants to build high density in downtown where they have Caltrain and light rail and BART soon, I think, they can do that, right? So I don't think, any of us will have any issues with that, at least not me. But dumping so much high density on borders is totally unacceptable. And I haven't seen, any other city do that anywhere, but I don't know why San Jose is doing. So without a transit solution, it's going to be a traffic nightmare and a gridlock for us to get to office. Right now, when I get through from my home in Cupertino to office in Santa Clara, by the way, my office is in Santa Clara, I drive through, San Jose, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, all the back roads. I avoid freeways. And even back roads will become, non-drivable. That's not what we want, right? Please join forces with, your neighboring cities like Cupertino, Saratoga, and Campbell to do what's needed, to stop this and, and bring sanity to what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob, you have 2 cards here now. I just got 2. Kurt Bartan after that, and then Scott Lane. Welcome.
Yes, Scott's got 2 cards now, too. My name is Bob Levy. Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. I'm a co-chair of the Stevens Creek Advisory Group, so you're welcome to throw a few questions at me as well as Kirk. And I wanted to bring up 3 points. First of all, the proposal's not adding a single job, not adding a single dwelling unit at all. This is all part of the general plan, and we're just adding a little bit of detail to that. So really, we're just adding design guidelines to the existing general plan. There's no proposal that's addition above and beyond the existing general plan. So for people to come out and say we're going to increase traffic, we're going to increase all these problems, no, that's just not true. It's exactly the same as it was before this proposal started. Second, it was a very open process, and it was particularly beneficial to Santa Clara. The 2 co-chairs, one worked for the city of Santa Clara, the other one was a business owner. We had a planning commissioner on board, and we also had a member of the planning staff, all part of the committee. So Santa Clara was very well represented within the committee, and your staff did a good job of like Andrew and John Davidson and Lee. They all did a very good job of coming to our meetings. So I think Santa Clara was heard throughout the entire process. And finally, this is a fantastic opportunity for our cities to work together. I think Andrew said this a couple times during the presentation, Attorney did, that we have a great opportunity to work together, particularly when it comes to Stevens Creek itself. Stevens Creek is a 100-foot right-of-way, and there's tremendous opportunity to improve our ability to get traffic through there by taking a close look at that right-of-way. Our committee is very interested in seeing parking removed from one side of the street so we can put in bike lanes and potentially, RTA potentially, but there's a fantastic opportunity for our cities to work together. But I just want to make sure everything's in context. We are not adding a single job to the current general plan. We're not adding a single housing unit to the current general plan.
Thank you.
And I would love to talk to you about the heights, too.
Thanks, Bob. Kurt Bartan and then Scott Lane. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. So just a couple clarifications. All these meetings that we've had, and we've had upwards of 40 meetings over the last 2.5 years, were noticed on Nextdoor. I personally did that, and I shared it with all my neighboring neighborhoods. And they range from 2 hours to 2.5 hours. So there are literally thousands of hours that went into discussing these things. And I'm not here to start lauding how great these urban village plans are. I'm not here to be a flag waver for it. I have plenty of issues with the urban villages, some of the designs. However, what they do is they start a conversation about what we're trying to accomplish in our city and in the region. And that really is, to me, the biggest takeaway. And I'll be real candid, Santa Clara did not put a lot of skin in the game in this process. We had representation on that, but they didn't represent just city, right? Ideally, I'd love to see Santa Clara, San Jose, Cupertino, throw Campbell in there too. That's great. Let's have a task force. Let's talk about these things. But guess what? The door was knocked on and no one answered. I was pleading with San Jose to get more Santa Clara participation. Official Santa Clara participation. And there was, staff stuff, that's fine. But I mean, at the table, every time, every meeting, every month, two times, sometimes 3 times a month, we would meet. So, my biggest message or my ask is, how can we look at this region together? Because if Santa Clara fails, San Jose fails, we all fail together. One city isn't just going to be the big winner. It's like, yay, we got our buildings built and everybody, it doesn't work that way. Whether you're in Santa Clara or San Jose, no one knows what business is in what city. No one cares. We just want to be able to get around, we want to live, and we want to enjoy ourselves. And when people talk about comparing to New York, yeah, you know what? This is never going to be New York. Let's get that right out of the way. But guess what? We're paying as much as New York is right now, if not more. And we should be getting some value for our dollars spent here, and we're not.
We do have New York pizza, though.
Yeah, we do.
I heard it's pretty good. Scott Lane.
No plug there. I'm not sure if there could be a map that showed the transit one. I thought that was actually a good one, or just any one of them, I suppose. Anyway, while you're loading that up, I think it's great that everyone is coming out to speak. I think it's great that the city council is concerned. I think it's great that the city council is talking about, and the staff, about the residents and quality of life and things like that. To follow what Kirk is saying, for years I've been saying, please, let's work regionally together. Santa Clara has a history of hosting the Grand Boulevard Initiative, so we should know about setbacks. This is not going to be a canyon. But it's kind of interesting, though, because I feel like you're trying to beat up on San Jose, but San Jose has 45 urban villages. San Jose is so far ahead of the game at getting inclusion of people, it's ridiculous. Do they listen to the people when it comes to the developers? No. They don't. But San Jose and Santa Clara, for all our concerns, we're sharing the same problems. We're not transparent enough. We don't outreach enough. We don't get VTA to do things right. This is a cautionary tale. The VTA was supposed to go down Stevens Creek with light rail over to Moffett, over to go up Matilda, De Anza Boulevard, up to Lockheed that had 30,000 employees. That was a big one. Why did they not do that? Because the developers wanted the money in North San Jose where nobody was. Rule number 1, if you want transit to fail, build it where no one wants to go. 30 years it took for that place to build up. We're paying the price now. We've got gridlock on these streets. With respect to Bob, yes, we're not adding more, but the development hasn't been developed, so obviously we're gonna shove hundreds and thousands more cars. So, before you beat up on San Jose, we had to beg and plead to get the Parks and Rec to even admit how tall the International Swim Center is gonna be at Central Park, 65 and 85 feet. And these buildings aren't that tall. San Jose, for the record, has mid-rises. They don't even have high-rises. They go up to 22 to maybe 25 stories. 12 stories, if done right, is good. 15 can be good, 18 to 25. It's how it's designed. It can be done in a world-class way. But let's work together. And I think you had enough skin in the game to actually sue San Jose if you need to.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I'll go to council lights and then we can make our comments. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. Since everybody's talking about communicating, and since there is no timeline at this point, and time is really of the essence regarding the Stevens Creek Urban Village, I'd like to make a motion to form a Stevens Creek Urban Village task force with mayor and council representatives from Santa Clara, Cupertino, San Jose, and Campbell. So I'd like to propose that motion.
Now, we're a study session. Can we just give direction, or can we have a motion? I'm sorry, City Attorney, just remind me. This is a study session, so can we talk about what we'd like to do? Do we need a formal motion?
I think you could, I mean, from a Brown Act standpoint, there was no recommendation on the study session. However, you know, you're talking about, I think you can come up with a motion. It's not really, you're not really taking too much action because it takes, in this case, 3 to tango. And, you know, so they would have to, it's basically, your basically your motion is to do outreach to try to form such a subcommittee. It's not like you're just forming the subcommittee.
Okay, so the motion is for outreach to elevate it to the highest level, mayor, council.
To have those discussions with those other cities.
To have discussions about that.
Right.
Not a bad idea. Is there a second?
I would second that.
A second? Okay, a motion second. All right, now, thank you, Councilmember Watanabe. Comments? Councilmember Mahan, were you finished, Councilmember Watanabe?
I'm fine.
Okay,
yes, thank you.
Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. I do have a few short comments. I realize we're already into our city council meeting time, but this is an important discussion. It really is important. We are moving from a suburban community, all of our communities, other than downtown San Jose, into an urban community, into a more urban environment. And it's a difficult transition. It's probably as difficult as the transition in the 50s when we went from an agricultural-based community with all of our beautiful orchards into a suburban community, and the orchards came down and the houses went up. However, we still have to approach it with some balance, with some reasonableness. Downtown San Jose is a downtown. It's not, you don't go through downtown to get anywhere. You go to downtown to do your business or whatever it is. I work a lot downtown when I go to the courts or the attorney's offices. And, you know, I go down Coleman Avenue and I get to downtown, I park and I walk around to where I need to go. Other than that, most people bypass downtown. You know, you'll go along 87 or you'll take 280. So unless you're going to downtown, I don't think you go through. To build these urban villages on these other locations along Stevens Creek, along Winchester Boulevard, along the El Camino Alameda corridor, along Bascom Avenue. Number one, we share all of these major corridors with other cities, Cupertino, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, San Jose. Some of them side by side. We share Winchester and Stevens Creek side by side. Some of them, like Bascom, we share end to end. So we have to be cognizant of what the needs of the surrounding neighborhoods are, not just what's in our city. We can't be that provincial. But these are major corridors. They are throughways. You go down Stevens Creek to get from Santa Clara to Cupertino, or you go down El Camino to get to any one of the cities along El Camino. You drive down Alameda to get to San Jose. So they're not really conducive to the kind of live, work, play area where you're just going to be there and not go anywhere else, because people are still going to use these corridors to get from one place to the other. So all these urban villages are going to do is add a lot more traffic congestion. We have to be cognizant of that and plan for that. But building heights have to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, because they're not going away anytime soon. You're not going to level these single-family neighborhoods on either side of these corridors where they all exist. So we have to build something that's going to be compatible. And I'm sorry, a 12-story building, a 15-story building along Stevens Creek, when in some cases a block away, or some cases 2 blocks away, you have a single-family home, and usually a single-story single-family home. It's just incompatible. So I think we need an approach that's going to be a little more reasonable. I know we need the housing. We need to build in affordable housing. The irony of these urban villages is the workers who are going to work in the businesses located in these urban villages, restaurant workers, hotel workers, nail shop owners, pet shop owners, these kinds of businesses, those workers aren't even going to be able to afford to live in these urban villages, in the condos and the apartments that are built in these places. So you're not going to have people that can live and work in their one building. So we need to be cognizant of all of these things. I think having some kind of a task force where the city's representatives can get together and discuss these issues really in a very informal but honest way, try to resolve them, try to grapple with these problems that we all face on a regional basis. Perhaps the Cities Association would be a good forum to start that kind of discussion. Perhaps a specialized task force with the different cities that are impacted would be a good place for that kind of discussion. But we need to have those discussions, and we need to have them quickly, and we need to listen to all of our neighbors to come up with some plans that I think are going to be better than what I think is being proposed here. And we have to take responsibility on our side too in Santa Clara. If we know that these are City of San Jose's general plan, how is that going to articulate with ours? How can we take some of the burden? Maybe San Jose's side doesn't need a 12-story building. They can get by with a 6-story. If on the other side, Santa Clara is also going to build a 6-story building. So that's the kind of thing we need to get going here. And I would be happy, I would be so happy to serve on that kind of a committee. Just saying.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Caserta.
Councilmember Mahan, that was really well said, and I don't want to repeat things. But I do think what comes out tonight is what makes people frustrated is not feeling heard. And I think tonight you felt heard, and I think the motion that Councilmember Watanabe said will give you another avenue to be heard. And ultimately, the buck stops with the elected officials. And I think getting elected officials from these 4 jurisdictions together will not only give you an avenue to be heard, but also allow us to try and craft policy collaboratively. So I also would love to serve on this committee as well. So.
Thank you. Anything else? Both your lights are on. Do you have any? Okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and support the motion. I think it's a wonderful idea. I know that this has been discussed for a long time. I know Bob and Kurt have been involved with the group, and as with anything in life, until it starts to become a real issue and in front of us, it's just like we'll talk about a development project for months and years, and until it comes to the city council meeting, then we'll have a chamber full of people saying they oppose and they didn't get involved in the first place. But we all knew about it. We thank you for trying to keep us informed, and with limited staff, we did what we could to get involved. But now it's at the level that it's going to become a reality, and now's the time. Should have been before, but it is now for Santa Clara to say, okay, we want to be part of the discussion. We want to be part of the process. We really want to be part of the process. We will approach this from a cooperative level at this point. But also, I want to make sure that we preserve our rights in the future, if we have to take any legal action or any other action, that we still have that opportunity in the event common sense doesn't way win at the end of the day. You can only look at Stevens Creek Boulevard to see, and I know several people had mentioned, it's unbalanced. It's really unbalanced. And again, it's a bold project, as Councilmember O'Neill said. This is a bold project, but with a bold project, you also need to have bold infrastructure improvements. You can't have one without the other. And I think that's just common sense. Common sense. It took me the other day to get from Stevens Creek and Saratoga to 280, 30 minutes. That's a very short little span, 30 minutes. And if you're trying to get to the mall, which I like to go, and I've spent a lot less money because I can't get there, from San Tomas Expressway to Winchester, it's a nightmare now. So imagine all these villages, everything, all this development with no real infrastructure. San Jose has protected intersections, which it's an interesting name because it doesn't mean that at all. They can spend the money not just on pedestrian or bicycle issues, they can spend it in other parts of San Jose. Not even in the area. The area could be miles away. So we've got a real problem. We have a problem for Santa Clara. We have a regional problem. We have a problem that you can't build the cart before the horse. So I'm all for cooperating and bringing it to the highest level is the point, at this point, that I think it needs to be. It really needs to be at this point, all of us sitting down and cooperating and talking together. But if it doesn't work, and we're not heard, and we're not able to do our best, and we will do our best to try to make things work together, I want to make sure, and I'm assured by all of our staff, that we still have the opportunity to take other action if we need to take this other action, because it's that important. Quality of life and it's Santa Clara that we're protecting at this point, but we understand it's a regional problem as well, but we're only charged with, at this point in time, protecting our residents from what is about to hit them if we don't step in. So thank you, Councilmember Watanabe, for making that bold move. And I want to commit myself to be available at all times to meet on this very important issue with San Jose Campbell and Cupertino. So I think we have a tremendous opportunity to work together, but we also have a fallback position in case it doesn't work. So anyways, there's a vote on the motion. Lights? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We're going to take a 5-minute break before we start our council meeting, and thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you. You did good. It was Kathy. It was my idea. I said, Kathy, our north side mayor.
Really well said. Oh, neither of us will get appointed.
Oh, yes, yep. No, it was great. I want to do it again. Good, yeah, and it's a good age. Good age, yeah. Sometimes it's stressful, but for the most part, you have a really good time. Exactly, exactly. Like going to the museums and seeing all of the I told Kelly, I said, well, if you have to write anything, what you did is something you got something good to write about. Exactly. We did Disneyland Paris. That was the fun thing. Yes, we did. Yeah, it was the train passes that I bought took us all the way out there. So it was, yes. It was slow there. No, you get the there and started to fall asleep. The first day.
Way down here.
Santana Row is a great.
Regional commercial. No, it's not, it's fencing, it's just saying it's commercial. It's commercially zoned.
Manchester. So you've got your
That's most expensive. You have to ask Flanders about.
Good motion. You read those guys just right. It was a good motion.
Yeah. Figure it out, but.
Some of our biggest lots.
Especially when we read it, there's like,
So T, thanks for bringing this up.
I will defend that till the day
I bring it up anyway. Just amazes me. This thing. They laugh. It's just like, seriously? Okay, we're ready.
is you're good at this. You're good at this.
I have mine now. I know.
Okay, back to the meeting.
We're going to call the meeting to order now. Thank you for having patience. We had a long study session, so if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for our statement of values.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interests of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Roll call, City Clerk.
Councilmember Caserta. Here. Davis.
Here.
Kolstad.
Here.
Mahan. O'Neill.
Here.
Watanabe. Here. Mayor Gilmore.
Here.
If I could also do the AB 23 announcement that members of the Santa Clara Stadium Authority, Sports and Open Space Authority, and Housing Authority are entitled to receive $30 for each attended meeting. Additionally, the city's Statement of Behavioral Standards. The City of Santa Clara has adopted a code of ethics and values and behavioral standards for public meetings to promote and maintain the highest levels of conduct. This includes mutual respect, robust discussion, and allowing city business to be done in an efficient and consistent manner. Please note that, as the presiding officer, the mayor's direction in matters of process and decorum should be followed. Welcome, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you for that. We have approval of minutes for August 22nd.
So moved.
Motion to approve, second. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. And then approval of the minutes, August 24th, special meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion, second. Lights on the motion, and that also passes unanimously. Continuances, exceptions. Does anyone have any? Assistant City Manager, any continuances or exceptions?
None.
No?
Thank you.
Public? All right. Seeing none, consent calendar, all items are approved with one motion unless there's any items to be pulled. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull 12B, 5, and 6.
12B, 5, and 6. Thank you. Councilmember Mahan?
Yes, I wanted to pull, just for discussion or clarification, A3, but just the second part of that.
A3?
Yeah, A3, but just subsection.
Well, it's all one, it's all
subsection.
together, so.
But I only was asking for clarification on the second subsection of that.
Okay, so
Just-
A3. Anything else?
Motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Is there any other cards, Rod, or anyone from the public? Just double check.
Nope, we're good.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second to approve the balance of the consent calendar? Motion second, lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. Moving along here, we have public presentations. Have a couple cards here. Okay, so public presentation, we have Clisticini is number 1, and then Gary Alves after that. And then I have a couple more cards after that. Good evening. Is that on, there's a light that goes on a bottom, there's a button there? Yes.
The one that says
so we can
push,
tell it's
sorry.
on. Oh,
Okay. When the city did its placemaking for trails in the 90s, Saratoga Creek, and they did it, by the way, cooperatively with the entire county, Saratoga Creek was to be managed for flood protection and environmental stewardship because of the fact that it backed up to so many homes. to the top of the bank. And because it had 4 neighborhood parks and 5 schools, so that it was looked at to be connected together in neighborhoods with bicycle lanes and walking from the neighborhoods. And so I've noticed that, I think it was Councilmember O'Neill proposed the idea of preparing a master plan for Central Park. And I think that's a really wise idea, and I support it. I noticed that Director Teixeira had put out RFPs for that already, and I think they're due in tomorrow, so I wanted to make these comments today. I'm here to request that the Central Park Master Plan include a scenario for pedestrian and bicycle access into, through, and out of the park that does not rely on the recently proposed Saratoga Creek Trail prepared by the Department of Public Works. The city's trail concept removes 94 trees from just the areas serviced at Central and Home Ridge Park. It removes flood protection that we citizens have already paid for, and it introduces concrete and ramps into the creek bed. The Water District has already had meetings and submitted letters to the city explaining that the 100-year flood design flows used by city staff for their project design do not meet Water District requirements for flood control or environmental stewardship. The Water District must issue permits for any work to be done inside the creek. Given the flooding and weather changes experienced just this year in Santa Clara County, given San Francisco Bay water level rise, remembering our creeks flow into the bay, so it's going to come back, and climate change projections, I don't see the district relaxing their requirements. If anything, I suspect they're going to go up. And I trust the Water District to determine the proper flow rates for planning on the Saratoga Creek watershed. I think that this Saratoga Creek Trail cannot be the only scenario presumed to be in existence when doing the master plan for Central Park. What steps can be taken to assure that access into, through, and out of the park for pedestrians and cyclists in the Central Park master plan is prepared with at least 2 cases, one with and one without the Department of Public Works proposed trail?
Thank you. I think Councilmember Mahan, did you have a question for Calista or a comment?
I was going to say, hi, Chris. It was just left over late.
Oh, okay. Councilmember O'Neill?
So I don't know if the Director of Public Works has any information on this, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm not quite sure how this is going to interact. We do have coming a special meeting of BPAC, the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I think on the 20th, to start our first meeting with the consultant that's been hired for our Central Creek Trail plan, but I'm not sure how that's going to interact, so I don't know if the Director of Public Works would like to say any kind of clarifying comment for Ms. Cindy. If you're not prepared to, that's fine. But I just wanted to let you know that I'll do a little bit more research, and we are going to be looking at all the creek trails, and that will be the kickoff meeting is September 20th.
Okay, but this one it needs Water District permitting, and that needs to be clear up front so that, because I went to the meeting this last week that Jude Berry shepherded us through regarding the Central Park, and he was asking questions about the Creek Trail, and people think that the Creek Trail that it's just automatically connected. They don't know that houses are up to the top of bank. This is not going to connect Lawrence Expressway to San Tomas Expressway, even though Saratoga Creek goes through there. So, people have an idea in their minds. And so I just think it's important that when these meetings and everything are occurring, that there be a scenario that specifically does not address that plan, so that we can have see what the access into and out of the park for pedestrians and for cyclists can be looked at in different ways than being locked into the proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gary Alves, please come forward.
Hello.
Good evening.
My name is Gary Hobbs. I live in Denise Drive. I have a couple of issues I wanted to speak on. The first is, at these meetings, I think the speakers that come up here should have to state what street and city they live in. The last meeting, 2 construction workers came up here on behalf of Prometheus saying they would get jobs due to that project getting approved. But we have no idea if they live in Santa Clara, and how would they know they're going to get these jobs anyway, because most of the jobs have to be bid out anyway. So I was kind of concerned about that. And also, I know when they did the 2 projects across from Save Mart, there were quite a few people working on those jobs that did not live in the area because those 2 little hotels by Polo Loco were full of construction workers during the week. So for them to be bringing out people, I think they should have to say where they're from. Also, if someone's going to come up here to support high density that does not live in the area or near that project, it should be noted, because they're not going to be the ones that are going to have to deal with the traffic, the high density, the heights of the buildings, the parking, all the problems that these projects create. So I just think that we should know who's speaking and where they're from. The next thing I wanted to speak about was Summerhill Homes is once again bringing basically the same project they've been trying to get passed for 2 years before the Planning Commission tomorrow, the one at El Camino McCormick. It's still 151 units as before, has only been reduced from 5 stories to 4, and originally they tried to push it off as a 4-story building anyway, saying it was only 5 to the middle. So it's still way too big. There's been no compromise on their part at all. It's still 151 units. The neighborhood does not want it. It's not right for that area. They've had several meetings, and you go to these meetings, they have not listened to the residents at all. It's the same thing every time. They show you what they're building, they go to the Planning Commission, then they come in here once again trying to get it passed, and it's been shot down twice. Now they're trying to call it senior living, and they're trying that smokescreen to get it passed. They're not affordable. The seniors aren't going to be able to afford the places at the rents they're asking for. They don't want to talk about the rent, but I was told that the studios were going to start at about $3,000 a month, and I don't think there's very many seniors that are going to pay that kind of rent. And if this passes with them doing the senior, calling it a senior living, well, then they're all going to start using that excuse to try to get things put through. What else do I have? They said the neighborhood doesn't want it. I don't think it's right for the area. To the 4 of you that rejected this last time, I thank you very much. The neighborhood thanks you, and hopefully you'll stick to your guns and turn it down again, which it should be turned down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. We can't talk about the Summerhill project because it will come before us, but I maybe can ask our city attorney. I know in the past, many years ago, people would come up and it would say, state your name and address. And then I thought that became not legal, so we can't ask anymore. So there's a reason for that.
Okay.
City attorney, do you know? Don't want to put you on the
No,
spot, but
we can't.
We can't ask.
You can't require someone to state their name and
Okay,
address.
well, I was just curious why they don't do it, because so many people come up here and it's like, okay,
We used
you've
to
got
do
nothing
that in
at
the
stake.
past.
Yeah,
And
and that's
you know,
why-
it was always nice to know until they
Yeah.
told us we couldn't ask anymore. So we had to, I think, take the little plate off there that said, state your name and address.
You can ask, but if they refuse, you can't forbid them from speaking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
All right.
I don't care if they speak, but I think we should know, if they have what their deal is for being here. And like I said, the construction workers, I was curious on that, because I saw so many guys at those little hotels by the Polo Loco, and then the weekends they're all gone. But so for them to come up here and say they're going to be getting jobs through this, it didn't seem right.
All right, thank you.
And the Summerhill thing, you should have stopped me when I started. I didn't know I wasn't supposed
No,
to.
no, you have a right to talk. I'm
Yeah.
just saying we can't really discuss
That's fair.
that.
I didn't
because
expect you to talk about it.
It's not fair for us
I'm
to
just
discuss it
frustrated
when
with
it'll be coming.
Yeah.
So-
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. Scott Lane? Good evening.
Hello, good evening, Mayor, City Council, Vice Mayor. This per se is maybe more for the public than for you per se, because I know this really isn't in your jurisdiction. This is more of the half of the Stadium Authority. But I know there is, I'll do a plug here. There's a Coldplay Head Full of Dreams tour, October 4th. That's pretty exciting. But my concern is the fact that the 49ers and Levi Stadium managers were told not to blow past the curfew, and they did by about an hour and 15 minutes. And I can't remember what the $700, $900, whatever it was. They also were told to actually, directed by the Stadium Authority, to actually find a specific pathway through the parking lot. And they also basically told us where to go with that, told you specifically, the Stadium Authority and City Council, where to go. So my concern is, since there are no consequences to said action of violating curfews, or any violation for that matter, whatever it is in the city, it doesn't have to be the Niners, it could be something else. My hope is that the Stadium Authority can actually create an emergency meeting to come up with a cost per minute, or whatever you feel is necessary to say, we're going to make it painful if you do not listen to us, the Stadium Authority, regarding the curfew. Longer term, I personally am hoping that the North Side can work with you to find out, should there be meetings, you know, up there to say how many events should be after the curfew? How much should it be? What's the cost per minute, et cetera? But that takes time. So we don't have time between now and the next Coldplay concert. So that's what I'm asking for, number one. Number two, just to let people know, or I say the public, because if they want to send you their comments, don't hate me for that. But people need to realize that it takes an hour and a half to clear the parking lot. So the lights are on for the stadium for hours on end. The noise is there for several hours after the concert. So I think people need to realize that they don't, if they don't live in that area, that just because something ends at 10 doesn't mean it's quiet by midnight. And if it goes to 11, 11:15, it has this ripple effect. Balancing that out, I want Santa Clara to make money. I want Santa Clara to have great venue with a great concert and great people. And I really just don't like the way that the 49ers and Levi Stadium consistently say, well, if you don't go our way, we're not going to book events there. I think that's frankly immature. It's unprofessional. And I hope the new Stadium Authority manager will look backwards as well as forwards to find all the violations that they've done with the contract. I believe the city attorney made the comment that they were going to, forgive me, I can't remember what it was, but they presumably were going to anticipatory breach of contract, I think is what it was before. So we're facing that once again. So what are the obligations we can do for the Stadium Authority to come up with something proactively, so there's like a $50,000 per minute hit if they do it, for example?
Thank you. Scott, and you're welcome to come to our Stadium Authority meeting next Tuesday. Same time, same place, 7 p.m. Happy Cohen, and then Kurt Vartan. Happy? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, ma'am. I need your help. I can't get the SVP people to look at the Wi-Fi system to my building. I live at Liberty Tower, and for years, we've always had Wi-Fi there across the street. Now we don't. And when August the 5th, it went down, and yet Sunday later, it went up for 3 hours, and then went down all forever. So I called out an expert, and he claims that there's something wrong with the relays, and he was going to call the city with the number I gave them, and they were going to call back. Days went by, no one ever called them back. So today I got an email. I never get callbacks. I got an email that says, this is the way we are, that's it. But it wasn't that way for years. We've always had the Wi-Fi across the street. We need to fix the machinery so we can have it again. Please. So this guy, Tom, he was very good. I paid him $100 to look at my system. The people who run on the Saturday, Sunday program, we have people, managers that come in. They took another woman's system, checked it out. to find out there was nothing wrong with her system either. It's all with the city and the Wi-Fi. And no one in City Hall wants to listen. Now, there's a woman, I can't think of her name right now. I have it back in my cart. But she is a secretary with your office. And she helped me for a couple of days. And then someone got to her. And all of a sudden, she won't help me anymore. So it's someone in this department who doesn't want to deal with the public.
I don't think that's the case, but what we really want to do is to help you.
Thank
So can our city clerk get your information, and I can ask our assistant city manager, can we make sure that this gentleman, you can't forget his name, it's Happy.
Happy Cohen.
Yes, Happy. Let's make sure that we're in contact with him.
Yes,
Ruth?
I mean, we will do that. So if we can make sure to get your contact information and in your address, make specifically your address so that we can look at the location.
Now, I went around the block right now, and SVP will not come up.
Can you pass that to the city clerk, please? We appreciate you taking the time to come here to let us know about this, so we will make sure that manager has assured us she'll follow through with this, with Silicon Valley Power, if that's the case, or whatever department is needed to look at. You said you lived at Liberty Towers?
Yes.
Okay. Liberty Towers, we all know where that is, so I know how frustrating it is when your Wi-Fi goes out. So thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll make sure we get to you right away.
Have a good day.
Thank you. All right, Kurt Vertan, you're next. And then I don't have any cards after that. Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening. I'll just make it shorter.
If you talk now, he won't start the thing.
Don't want to all right. So I'm just here to follow up on some thoughts that came out of the study session. I'm not talking about the study session since that was on an agenda item, but what came out of that, which I was very happy to hear, is a task force and the interest and excitement to have local jurisdictions work together. At least start out that way. You know, congenial, collaborative. That's great. One of the things I hope we can do is make sure that the ground rules and the facts and the data are well understood, and we have a common set of goals and a common set of understanding of that information. The first I'd like to point out is it's been widely reported and agreed that population in Santa Clara County is going to grow by about 300,000 people over the next 15 years. And as Don Whedon, the expert in planning, reminds us, that's the size of 2 Sunnyvales. So just to put it in perspective, that's 2 Sunnyvales. So given that as some basic data, first we all have to agree that that's true. And if it is, we have some questions to ask. How would you propose to address/solve our housing affordability problems? What actions do you propose for addressing the challenges proposed by the rapidly aging population and workforce? What are likely to be the potential consequences for our city/community if we don't adequately address our current problems and prepare for increased or additional challenges that are rapidly coming our way? What would happen to the social and economic well-being if our city/community, if we adopted plans and policies that sought to freeze in place the status quo? Do you think that each city should allow enough housing to be built to meet the needs of the workers in that city from all economic classes? The income a city receives from housing built at less than 40 units per acre is not enough to cover the cost of services, police, fire, libraries. Should developments charge developers additional fees on developments for less than 40 units per acre and put that money into a fund to support housing in other areas? Should cities be allowed to require that affordable housing be included in every multifamily development? Should cities prioritize property owners' home values over ensuring that there is enough housing in each city? Countywide, should green space and parks be sacrificed for housing so that local densities can be lower? Would you prefer to have higher local dense housing and less congestion, or housing further away and more congestion? Should cities prevent new jobs from being created in their city if no housing to support the additional employees exists? Do you want to stop or reduce population growth in your city? If so, how would you do this? A, no new companies are allowed. B, no companies can grow their employment locally. C, new local employees can only be added if existing employees leave the area. D, parents in the city cannot have additional children. E, family members cannot join a household if they come outside of the area or some other way. And should cities enact policies that require housing be built that would allow a single or couple to afford to live in the area if they are a teacher, nurse, city employee, or service worker? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any other cards or any other public presentations. Please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Happy to see you're back. I hope things are going well. I have some ongoing questions that I'd like to find out how we as citizens get them answered. There's a number of us, not just myself, but often myself, come up here asking questions. God bless Jennifer Sparacino, because she used to actually write them down. And then guess what? We actually got answers. I hope that our next city manager follows that and really admires and respects who she's working for and notes the questions and provides answers. So I'd like to know from this council if that is a priority, or how do we get our citizens' questions answered? I don't think it should take a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist, but we probably could get one up here, or maybe we could elect one to get that problem solved. The next issue, time limits on study sessions. I specifically was told yesterday in the governance meeting that there would not be time limits of 2 minutes on a study session because of the nature of the study session, because that was our one chance to be able to really discuss something in depth. But it appears that there's people who take great pleasure in limiting the amount of discussion we have at study sessions. Once again, why do you not want to have input from your citizens? Those issues that we discussed are critically important. You let other people run over, and when you let them run over, you're required to let everybody run over. Again, that was brought up in the governance meeting. So please consider increasing for study sessions back to 3 minutes. In fact, when the mayor became the mayor, she was going to go back to 3 minutes because of a commitment to open and transparent governments, because amen and thank you, Lisa, for getting rid of the 1 minute, because that was impossible to even catch your breath in 1 minute. But the 2 minute on many things is very difficult to get your point across. So I really hope that soon we'll get back to the 3 minutes that we were led to believe, and I've talked to many citizens saying, are we still doing 2 minutes? I thought that was going away per what Lisa said. And the last thing is my favorite, and it won't be the Creek Trail. It's the signal at Cronin. What in the hell is it going to take to finally get that signal installed? You've approved it, you've budgeted it. Can I go out and hire somebody to put the damn thing in and hand you the bill? There are lots of contractors in this city. There are lots of people who install signal lights. Today, it was a mess with the Apple thing on Prune Ridge. You could not get out of that intersection. And I'd like some extra time because you've given it to everybody today, Lisa.
No, it's done. No,
okay.
But thank you.
I need to have an answer as to when we're going to get that signal installed before someone is killed.
All right, thank you.
Please answer the question.
Okay,
You've
thank you
answered
very
other
much.
people's questions
I
tonight.
will answer
Please
questions.
answer.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay. First of all, citizens' questions answered. Yeah, that's really up to the manager at that point. We try to answer as many as we can up here. If you have specific questions, maybe sometimes you don't like the answer, so that's part of the issue as well. Time limits on study sessions, we do have 3 minutes for public presentations, which you just took advantage of, so we do have 3 minutes. I was under the understanding for study sessions it was still 2 minutes unless we extended it. So maybe I can get some clarification on that. What our policies, City Clerk, do you have? what our policy is?
We do the
What we
policy.
agreed to?
Yeah, the policy that was approved through the governance committee and by the council was 1 minute for requests for consent calendar items to be pulled for discussion, 2 minutes for public presentations on individual agenda items, which would be a study session, 3 minutes for public presentations, which we've seen being practiced here, 5 minutes for a written petition, and then 10 minutes for the presentation of an applicant or an appellant or the challenged party in a public hearing.
Okay.
So it is consistent with the rules that were set up and agreed to by the council that 2 minutes was the correct time frame.
Thank you. I just want to be consistent. Councilmember O'Neill, you have a clarification
Just
on the
as a point of
governance committee?
clarification, this topic, the topic of time came up yesterday, and perhaps I misunderstood Ms. Bress. When she was talking about cutting the study sessions, I actually meant the length of the study session as, like just as we did tonight, we extended the length of the study session to make sure that everybody had a chance to speak. If you meant the time that you as an individual could speak, then I apologize, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying that we were cutting off the whole length of the study session, which most of our study sessions no longer go the length of the time that we've allowed. They're very frequently running a half an hour or 45 minutes.
Right.
So if I misunderstood you, I apologize. I was referring to the length of the entire session.
Thank you, and I will not cut anyone off if there's a member of the public that wants to speak on an item at a study session. We'll just start the council meeting late. Any other public presentations? Please come forward. Yes.
Hey, Hassam Hagag here. I try to make it a point that as much as I come to complain about things, that also, whenever possible, to thank the city, either council or staff, for doing something that I think is amazing. I just noticed, I think a couple days ago, that there is a new thing that is being put on the website. I think it's called Santa Clara Source, which is like a 2-minute summary of the council meetings or the stadium authority meetings. So is it like 1 minute 41 seconds or something like that? So whoever did that,
Jennifer?
I don't know who gets credit for that, but thank you so much, because I think I watch every single one and they are awesome. So
I think he's trying to get in one too, Jennifer, if you didn't notice.
no, I don't need to be in any of them. I'm just saying that they are awesome, so thank you for doing them and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you very much for that compliment. We like those. All right, any other members of the public? Please come forward.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Kyle. I've been a Santa Clara resident my entire life and would like to offer up some food for thought while you craft your ordinance regarding Prop 64. The cannabis industry produces jobs, provides tax revenue, and strengthens the economy.
Sir, we have that item on the agenda. If you wouldn't mind waiting until it's on almost next.
Oh, okay.
For Prop 64. 15A. Okay, we'll get to you in a minute. Thank you, though. Anyone else? Public presentation? These are for items that are not on the agenda. Please come forward.
My name is Mark Afton. I'm a resident. I own a house in Santa Clara. So thank you, council. And I wanted to follow up on what he said. And I believe you guys have fixed the trail, the bike trail that goes by the stadium. Has that been fixed, or did I
Not yet, but
misunderstand
we're almost there.
Well, I want to thank you for your efforts in that area and for trying to clamp down on the curfew. I would love to see concerts go later than that, to tell the truth, but I'm totally against it if that's what we promised the residents when we put the stadium in. You know, they're the ones that are impacted. They've got kids that need to go to bed on weeknights, and if we promise them that the music will be cut off at a certain hour, it should be cut off at that hour. So then the other thing I wanted to try to get an update on where we are on amending the general plan, because I thought that we have some new insights on the general plan. We wanted to review that, and I'm not really clear on where we are on that. And the Nexus study, which I don't believe has been brought up for a while, so I'd just like to check in on that. And I sort of had another question, and that is, you know, I was looking at the paper today, and it said something about Welch Road. There's some Swift just sold some property to somebody else that's possibly going to be doing some housing there. And I'm always, you know, anti-high density housing, but that's actually a spot where I'd like to see some high density housing.
What road was that?
It's on Walsh Road,
Oh,
right
Walsh.
near the new NVIDIA building, right across the street from it. And and in the same article, they said the city wants to put high-density housing there, and I was just wondering how they got that information, how that information exchanges, and because I'm not really clear on that. So, yeah, but that being said, I'd like to see high-density housing, you know, go 20 million stories into the air if necessary so we can get some more housing. But At the same time, I would like to see transportation issues, and I think I got in here a little bit late for the 4:30 or whatever, the study that was taking place right before, and you are starting to talk about an area-wide transportation solutions, and I think that's really important. You know, I think we're getting there, and I see, you know, and I'm reading a lot of stuff. You know, there's some bills in the state level right now where they're pressuring us to get more housing, and I'm just wondering how that manifests itself to us. It sounds like they've been sort of weak on pushing that through, and now they're trying to really pressure us to get more high-density housing. And if we do it responsibly, and we also have a transportation, you know, fix in there, and take care of our parks and our schools and the infrastructure, then yeah, I'm all pro-growth. You know, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we are working on the El Camino specific plan and out north of the Bay Shore area. Our affordable housing nexus study, we've already voted on that, and that should be our ordinance. It's coming back soon. Walsh Road, I wasn't familiar with that development, but we're making an effort to try to build residential next to work areas, so that's ongoing. But thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Okay, thank you for the public presentations. Next, we have consent items pulled for discussion. First, Councilmember Mahan, A3. And A3 is adoption of resolution setting the salary for the position of city manager and consenting to city manager's outside activities with Silicon Valley Leadership Group Foundation.
Thank you, and I only wanted to talk about the second part. This was the item 2, of that, which was the approval of having our city manager sit on the Silicon Valley Leadership Group Board of Directors. First of all, it's a very great honor to be asked, and they do a lot of good work in our community, and they've helped our city in many ways over the years. But I have a couple of questions. First of all, I just want to clarify that there's no cost or financial obligation to be on the Board of Directors. Is that right?
It's the foundation board, not the board of directors. So.
Yeah, it's the
foundation board.
It's the foundation board, and there's no cost to the city.
Okay, so there'd be no city expenditures for having her serve in this position?
No.
And I did speak to our incoming city manager, Ms. Santana, and I understand that a large part of her role on this foundation board will be to raise funds in the community for their charitable purposes, which is laudable. I'm very happy to see her take an interest in that level and doing that. But I also spoke to her about the conflict of interest, and she's very sensitive to this issue. The board does have a conflict of interest statement for its directors, but it is simply if you have a personal conflict of interest or a personal financial interest in any project, then of course you would recuse yourself from voting on such issues. But we also spoke about the potential appearance of a conflict of interest or the appearance of some impropriety. My question is, do we have any city manager directive on this sort of issue? So if you are serving on a charitable board, that you, especially in light of our lobbyist ordinance, that you would not be able to approach for fundraising somebody who might be a registered lobbyist with our city, or a company or agency that might have an application or a project pending in front of our city?
As city manager, the city manager is subject to all of the FPPC rules, all of the conflict of interest code, state statutes, and appearance of impropriety. And so that, you know, she could not participate in anything at the foundation that would be in conflict with her role as city manager. So she would, similar to the way that you might recuse yourself if you felt you had a conflict here, she would have to recuse herself from anything that she as a board member would be asked to weigh in on. I'm not sure how much board members themselves do any kind of outreach to charities. My understanding of what she'd be doing.
Not to charities,
to contributors even.
Yes, there was quite a bit. That's probably one of her sole purposes. One of her major purposes on serving on the foundation board, as she explained it to me, would be to go out in the community and fundraise for the foundation.
Well, she'd have to make sure that did not create the appearance of an impropriety with her role as city manager here. This would have to be precedent, because we're giving her permission to serve on the board. That's the nature of the action tonight, would be to consent to her to engage in that outside activity. I think there's some perception that would be of benefit to the city, that our city manager would have that role. However, she'd have to be cognizant in all of her activity with the foundation that it would not be in conflict with her duties as city manager. And I think she understands that. If you'd like, we could put this matter over, this particular resolution, if she's here.
Well, I'm not sure that's my purpose.
Okay.
My purpose was more to see if we did have some sort of policy in writing that we, because she had these same concerns, that she would not want to cross that line.
Well, I mean, it's all FPPC rules. I mean, she is subject to them, and she could either seek guidance from me or directly from the FPPC if she had any questions about any activity she might be engaging in for the foundation that would be in conflict with the city.
And then lastly, she did say that the city of San Jose has one of its, I think it's an assistant city manager, not sure if it's assistant or deputy, that also serves on the foundation board. And she was going to see what policy, or if they had anything on this conflict of interest, but I guess she hadn't gotten that yet. She did send the foundation's conflict of interest form for us to review. Not sure it would make any difference, but I'm just happy to know that, you know, we'll just be cognizant of this.
Yeah, I think our guidance will always be that because she needs your permission, you can definitely, you know, in passing this resolution, express a sentiment that her highest duty is still to the city, and she'd have to, in other words, if there's a conflict, it would be she'd have to recuse herself from the foundation issue rather than the city issue.
Oh, I'm satisfied that she realizes that, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so with that then, I'll move staff recommendation.
We have a host of lights on, so there's a motion for staff recommendation. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, everyone still wants to talk? Okay, Vice Mayor Caserta.
So I've spoken ad nauseum on the salary, and I'm not going to revisit that, but you know, whether it was city manager on Racefield, Sparacino, Fuentes, Batra, we've never had a city manager ask for this request, and this is a Herculean job. She's paid handsomely for it, and my concern is any time away, philanthropic or other, away from this job is away from serving our residents. And, you know, I'm on a board myself. One of the huge jobs of being a board member is raising money, and I think there is, in politics, perception. And people's perceptions are reality. So if this was bifurcated, I agree with Councilwoman Mahan that there are steps in place, FPPC statutes, et cetera. But this, again, just doesn't pass a smell test for me. It's never been done before in our city. I feel like Carl and his group do amazing work, whether it's policy perspective or foundation perspective. So since it's not bifurcated, not only for the salary issue, but just this perception you can't serve two masters, I will be voting against it.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Neill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, as the mayor alluded to earlier, I spent my career working for Hewlett-Packard, and one of the things that always amazed me was the philosophies of the founders in terms of that they thought that it benefited their managers and executives to play an active role in the community. And actually, David Packard, when he was the president of Hewlett-Packard Company, served as an elected member of the Palo Alto Unified School Board and on many other boards. And somehow he managed to find a way to juggle those activities. And I think that actually continuing to participate in the nonprofit sector is a way of broadening your perspectives. And also, in the past, we've had a little bit of some thought, or there's been comments that Santa Clara tends to be a little insular. So I think that having our city manager participate on some of these boards, and it doesn't sound like she's got a laundry list of them, I think will not only provide more visibility for Santa Clara, but it also gives her additional perspectives as to what's going on in the community. That being said, I know yesterday we did have a discussion at the governance committee. We're looking at the city attorney is helping us develop, and as is the community outreach manager, policies on sponsorship, donations and all those things. And I don't know, we might be able, as we continue, the topic came up even about having employees solicit sponsorships, which in effect is, a donation in their city role. And, perhaps we could spend a little bit more time looking at that. I know this is something that she would be doing for outside the city, but I know just in general that sometimes, that can be a little complicated. So we might just give it a little bit more thought and perhaps if she's, provide some guidance. I don't know if the city attorney has any thought on, and if there's some way we might gain some insight from the policies that we are hoping to bring to the council in the coming months.
Thank you. I also will support this because I believe our city manager should be involved, engaged in the community in many different ways. All of us are. We all sit on boards. We all sit on foundations. We're also subject to the same rules of FPPC and others that the city manager would be subject to. So it's no different than us serving on these boards and foundations like we all do. So there's a motion and a second. Lights on the motion? I'm sorry, members of the public. So sorry, Deborah.
Thank you. I kind of have a problem with two ways this is being done. Number one, I think this ask should be coming from her herself when she arrives. So I would respectfully request that this ask be done by the person doing it once she has her seat in the seat, and see if she really has time to do an outside activity, unless doing an activity for a private group using public funds is done outside of her work hours. Because if she's doing it inside of her work hours, that is a use of public money. So I would ask that we postpone that and have her do the ask. Secondly, I do have a difficult time having her sit on a private foundation, and the Silicon Valley leadership does a lot of things that we as a city don't always agree with. Carl Godino and his group sponsors things that represents a lot of developers, represents a lot of big businesses, represents a lot of private interests, and we are still a public entity. We are still paid by the citizens. It still comes out of our tax money. So as much as I totally believe in foundations and have my own 501c3, and I know what it takes to do that and the fundraising necessary, I would respectfully request we hold off on that and find out. I didn't see if we had an outline of even what the role and responsibility in this role is, and if it's done completely outside of business hours. I wouldn't like to see a phone used and time used and activities done here. I think she's going to be busy as a one-handed wallpaper hanger in a windstorm with the job she's got to do here. So could we table this, please? And I still want to know about the Cronin signal light. Thank you.
In process. Thank you. The board meeting participation for this particular activity on the foundation is 4 meetings a year, and each meeting is for an hour and a half, and the requirement is that you attend 3 out of the 4 meetings. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. Lights on the motion, and that passes with 1 no vote. You have that, City Clerk? Okay, thank you. All right, next we have the other items pulled. Councilmember O'Neill, which is 12B5. 12B5 is approval of a 2-year public service grant agreement with Housing Trust Silicon Valley for the Finally Home program in an amount not to exceed $106,182.
Yes, thank you. So my request in pulling items 5 and 6 was both so that we could just receive a high-level overview, because I know there's a fair amount of interest in the community in these topics related to affordable housing and the homeless. And so I had asked the Assistant City Manager if she could make sure that we could just do an overview.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. I'll just give a brief overview of the action item, and then I'll call on Jonathan Veach, who is our Housing and Community Services Manager, to talk a little bit about the program itself. So for this first item, 12B5, this is a 2-year agreement with the Housing Trust of Silicon Valley for the TBRA program, or the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program. This would include no new monies because for reasons what Jonathan might go over, is that we were unable to spend all the monies under this program from the last contract, and so this contract is basically rolling over $106,182 into this new 2-year contract. But for the program and the benefits of the program, I'll call on Jonathan if he can come up and give us a brief overview.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. Would you like me to go over, in summary, all of the housing programs we have, or specifically the ones that are on the agenda tonight?
Well, yeah, why don't you just, if you could talk a little bit about like what we're trying to do with these TBRAs, the tenant-based rental assistance, and what are some of the challenges that we're having?
Sure. So one of the trends we've noticed is that the County Office of Supportive Housing has really taken the lead with homeless assistance programs and really supportive housing. And so because we're in an environment where there's a lack of resources really for affordable housing development, we've really tried to maximize the resources we do have by partnering, having strategic partnerships with other agencies and maximizing program income. So both items on the agenda tonight are really an example of us trying to create strategic partnerships and leverage the money we have and try to make it go as far as possible. We're definitely excited about the housing impact fees because once they come in, they'll really help replenish the funds we lost with the dissolution of the redevelopment agency and really the restraints we're finding with our HUD grant entitlements. They seem to always be at risk with every funding cycle. So the partnership with the County Office of Supportive Housing is one of our core homeless assistance programs. And so what we do is we offer case management services to 20 individuals who are at risk of homelessness or homeless. And so the amount, the $125,000 pays for case management services. But what we also get for these clients after they engage in case management is long-term supportive housing subsidies, and that's at no cost to us. So that's really a great example of how we can leverage our funds. We pay for the case management through the county, who's taken the lead on homelessness and supportive housing, and we can leverage that and get permanent supportive housing for these individuals. And also our city police department refers individuals to this program. So we're really able to target the most vulnerable individuals in Santa Clara for this program. And then the other program is kind of an ancillary program. It's a security deposit assistance program. And the challenge is, with some of the restrictions, this is funded by federal money. We need an individual to qualify at 60% AMI. And at that level, it's really hard to provide security deposit assistance to somebody looking for a market rate home. It just doesn't match, right? That income with current rents doesn't match. So it's hard to find enough tenants to actually give that support to. So there's been staff turnover at Housing Trust Silicon Valley, but we've also are making an effort to combine this program with our affordable housing pipeline. So we have a lot of affordable housing units through legacy programs and through the redevelopment agency. And so we want landlords and housing owners to know about this program. So when a unit turns over that's affordable, they can reach out and make sure that tenants are getting this support that's available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So we'll take them one at a time, Teresa.
So I move that we approve the public service grant agreement with Housing Trust Silicon Valley.
Motion second. Any member of the public want to speak on this? All right, lights on the motion. And that passes unanimously. And then we have 12B6, which is approval of a 2-year revenue agreement with the County of Santa Clara Office of Supportive Housing for the Santa Clara Intensive Case Management and Homeless Prevention Program for an amount not to exceed $350,000 over the 2-year term, subject to budget appropriations. Councilmember O'Neill?
Okay, again, similarly, just so that we can understand, because I know that this is an item of concern for the public.
Absolutely. Yes.
So on this particular item, this contract is with the County of Santa Clara, and it's for the case management for up to 20 homeless chronically homeless individuals. Jonathan mentioned a little bit about the program in his previous comments. So that the TBRO program, which was the other program that you just voted on with the Housing Trust, was the program that he referred to as an ancillary program. This program here with the County of Santa Clara is going to provide the case management. These referrals are made typically from the police department to the county, and then they try and manage these cases and then take on the responsibility over time for these people.
Okay, and then there's also the element of the preventing homelessness for some of the other folks that.
Correct. I'm sorry about that. Yes. So this contract has two components. One is for the case management, which I discussed a little earlier. The other one is for for prevention purposes. So it's $100,000 of this contract goes for that program, and that's to help out with emergency assistance such as rent, security deposits, food, work-related transportation, and this is in hopes of helping people prior to the time that they actually become homeless.
Yeah, because I guess what we have found is that once somebody loses their housing, their life circumstances really kind of come crashing down, and it's much harder to get them back into housing. And so I think that's one of the key strategies that I've heard of in the county, is just to find a way to keep people in housing that they've got, and if they need some financial help to bridge a difficult time. So that's what we're going to be funding.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So I will move that we would approve the agreement with the Santa Clara County Office of Supportive Housing.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. And there's a second. Is there any member of the public wanting to speak on this issue? All right, lights on that motion, and that passes unanimously. All right, going back to our unfinished business. We have follow-up information regarding Proposition 64, Adult Use of Marijuana Act, direction to the city manager to retain a consultant to complete an analysis of all classes of commercial marijuana operations within the city, and return to council with the results and a draft ordinance temporarily banning all commercial marijuana activity within the city. Assistant City Manager.
For this particular item, I'm going to defer to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
And this is just a short item that we have here. A few weeks ago, we had the study session on legalized marijuana, which will go into effect statewide on January 1st. The council did express some interest in pursuing the idea of allowing certain commercial uses in those areas where we can allow it. However, I don't think we did a very good job of indicating to you the timing on how you might do this regulation. The way this works is if we don't do anything, if we don't get all of our ordinances in place by January 1st, what happens is then the state law, all of the permissive aspects of state law will go into effect in Santa Clara. So given that there's going to be quite a bit to study in terms of those areas that you might want to do some permissive commercial activity in Santa Clara, you have aspects to look at with the police department, with planning, with conflicting uses, with the finance, whether you want to tax it, things like that. We're suggesting that you just go ahead and institute it, give us direction to come back with a very quick ordinance to temporarily ban those things that we can ban as of January 1st, while we still look at those commercial aspects which we may want to permit. We should probably also prioritize the financial aspects, because for whether it's legal or not, you can still tax it. So you may want to get that report back a little bit sooner than the permitted commercial activity. And so what we're looking for right now is simply direction to bring back an ordinance that would institute the commercial ban prior to January 1st.
So, Mr. Doyle, in terms of one of the recommendations is to retain a consultant to complete the analysis of where we may want to allow this, approximately how long, assuming this passes, are we looking at months? Are we looking into the first quarter of next year?
Probably at least
into
the first
that?
quarter of next year.
So
yeah.
if you brought back an ordinance, it would be a temporary nature,
could-
until we are able to actually deep dive into
Well,
a
the
consultant
way to
report?
do it temporarily would be to put a sunset in it.
Yeah, okay,
So we can do it as maybe with a 2-year sunset or something like that.
okay, or sooner. Councilmember Davis?
Thank you, City Attorney. I was talking with Sue, who's deep into this, and we had a discussion because she wasn't really sure where that last conversation went, but she was looking into our light industrial area for options if the council decided to go and have dispensaries. So I agree that we need to have that consultant come in and do that deep dive for us, because there was opposition from certain people, then there was people saying, yes, we need to do this. So I think that at the last meeting that we found, there were pros and cons. So I'm going to support the staff recommendation on that, because I think that it's useful for us as a body to understand what's going on, and I know that if we don't do that, then we're gonna be caught. And I don't want to be caught in the middle of something that we can't really get rid of, so. I think we need to do due diligence on this, so I will be supporting the motion for that. But thank you for the investigative work.
Vice Mayor Caserta?
I want to make sure that the action you're asking of us, and I made it clear myself, I think we need to tax this, regulate this. This is a fledgling industry. This is something overwhelmingly passed by Santa Clarans. It's a chance to reap quite a large deal of revenue. So I just want to clarify that the timing of this by January 1, if the majority of us want to do this, we can hit the ground running and do this. Is that what you're saying? There's no way in this action preventing that.
No, it would be the exact opposite.
Yeah.
We would be banning it as of January 1st, so that we would have time to bring back a comprehensive program as to what you would be allowing. So there might be a ban in effect as of January 1st until such time as you implemented the well-thought-out what commercial activities you'd want to allow.
So my question is, it's early September. January 1st is still 3.5 months away. Why can't we do our yeoman's effort and get stakeholders together and get this done by that time frame?
Well, we'd basically have to get it done by effectively the middle of November.
Okay,
You have to
so
have first reading, second reading.
Right,
right. 30 days for this entire program. It wouldn't be us doing it, it would be the city staff. We don't even have the new city manager here to know if that's a doable thing. It's a
well, I mean,
fairly-
I can't speak for my colleagues, but I thought there was consensus that there was a desire to tax this and regulate it, and I would hate to get caught in bureaucracy from the center of what's possible. So, and I'm not here indicting. I'm just saying we have two plus months. I'd like to do whatever I can to get stakeholders together, assistant city manager, and get this running, because this is millions of dollars potentially.
I understand what you're saying. I think that the challenges from getting the stakeholder communication is that there is a very wide breadth of issues related to potential ordinances about what we would and would not allow. There are many different types of industries related, sub-industries related to cannabis, whether it be sale, transportation, or manufacturing. And then there's issues related to where we want to put them, where we want them to be away from, if you want certain radiuses from residential or from schools. Do you want them a big radius? Do you want a smaller radius? So those kinds of things, there are a number of regulations that would need to be put in place, and we certainly are prepared to jump in and work through them. I think that what the city attorney is indicating is that that may take some time, and so that's why we're looking at wanting to procure a consultant to help us out. We've already done some preliminary outreach with a representative from the industry who, I was asking, can you give us some names of consultants that provide a fair balance that we might be able to reach out and ask for a proposal from? So it's not that it would be very challenging. I guess that there's nothing impossible, but to say that we'd be able to have something in place by that time, I think be extremely, extremely difficult.
And I appreciate that since our closed session, which was less than a month ago, you actually have done some action steps. My just point is, I know bureaucracy after 11 years, that the next thing you know, it's June of next year. I just wanted some tangible benchmarks where we can build towards this. And I don't know if it's an economic development committee or an existing committee. I don't know the answer to that. But I guess what I'm asking you is, what can we tangibly do on this dais tonight to get the ball rolling? Because I'm not hearing that.
So I think there's a couple of things we might be able to look at. One, certainly next week or the next meeting, if we can get it done that fast. As far as the temporary ban, we can look at putting some information in that report as to a work plan. It might be skeletal given how quickly that we'd like to bring back a temporary ban. And then beyond that, we can certainly give you some benchmarks as far as procuring a consultant. And then once that consultant is identified, give you more benchmarks as to what the timing of that scope of work might be. So we can certainly come back at different points to give you some assurance that, in fact, that we are continuing to make progress on bringing forward a comprehensive ordinance that would address legalizing, permitting certain parts of the
Good. That's what I was looking for, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Mahan?
Yes, thank you. As I recall, we actually had directed staff to go forward for an ordinance to allow marijuana dispensaries, but to bring back before January a ban on the large-scale cultivation, because my understanding, according to the report we got, was that if you didn't take steps to ban things before January 1st, then you would lose your opportunity to do so. And we certainly agreed that we didn't want large-scale farming or cultivation. And I would still be supportive of that. But I'm not as supportive of having a temporary ban on the dispensaries, because if that's out there and these dispensaries are going to proliferate throughout every other area, but not in our city, we're going to lose those revenue streams. I mean, this is happening. Marijuana is now legal in California, so I am not interested in banning it and being late to this game and losing these potential revenue sources. Our city needs it. Our city's in financial trouble. Not that that's a reason to, engage in vice. You can make the same argument out in gambling, casinos, and everything else. But it's legal now. It's not up to us to say it's illegal, we can ban it, we should ban it. It's legal in California. We need to regulate it. We need to regulate it now. And I don't think our motion was to come back with a temporary ban, other than banning large-scale cultivation. And I've asked our city clerk if he had the motion that was passed.
Yeah, I was going to say, that would be helpful to, because I'm hearing things I never heard before.
I think that direction is clear. I think what was happening when we started looking at this was some of the issues with dispensaries is largely locational. And so that's going to involve the zoning code. It's going to involve some level of public outreach as to where do you want these things. And I think there was some level of angst among the staff about whether they could actually get that done by January.
But my understanding was we didn't have to get that piece of it done. We just had to get the banning part of it done by January 1st, or we would lose the opportunity to do that part.
No, if you don't ban dispensaries, then they can just be any commercial there's a commercial activity that just can take place in any commercial zone.
But there are state rules already in place that with schools and on all of those things. But
I
would like to know what our motion was. I really would, and I know the city clerk.
Okay.
Maybe we should just continue this and get that information first, because
we can continue.
We're going to get so far behind
Okay,
that
let's, maybe, is that a motion to continue? 'Cause
Sure,
we need more information and
yes.
timelines and everything else. And maybe by our next meeting, you'll have some of the timelines, because if we're looking at January, but we'll end up getting the report by February or March. I mean, I'm based on all this, it looks like the first quarter of the year. So if we want to move
certainly
quickly.
do that, and
Okay,
then
so there's a motion to continue, and that would be to our next meeting on the 29th.
So you're killing my motion and we're
26th.
continuing.
Sorry, I never heard a motion.
Well, I kind of put it in there a little bit,
Okay.
and I will be supporting, but that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, motion to continue and a second. Okay, is there any discussion about motion to continue? It's just on the motion to continue. Okay. No discussion, lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously. That'll come back on the 26th, right? Is that our next council meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have reports for action, approval of appropriations from the unallocated mitigation fee act account in the amount of $385,000 to playground construction capital improvement program, project number 3178 for design and construction of the Fuller Street Phase 2 Sport Court, and authorization to solicit community input and develop appropriate plans, specifications, and cost estimate for completion of the project. Assistant City Manager?
I'd move staff recommendation.
Second. Okay, motion second. Would you like to give us a brief, anything on this?
So we're here at the pleasure of the council, if the council would like
Well,
to have.
when we're talking about a positive thing like a park project, just give us the,
We
a little bit about this. Yes?
We do have
It's nice to know.
a brief presentation from our Director of Parks and Recreation, Jim Teixeira.
We had park fees for a reason. This is one of them.
Yes. And
Thank you.
This is exciting. We're bringing this
Yes.
Out of the regular budget cycle tonight because we do have funds, and we also have an answer to the question, how can we speed up the delivery of additional playgrounds and sport courts? So we do have an unfunded project that's been listed since 2003. And so this is a way of moving that forward, and if we're able to do it in an expeditious way, then we'll also move on to Ag News on the playground there, which is also old. So we have a way forward, and this is the way to get it started.
Okay. Councilmember O'Neill and then Mahan.
Oh, no, sorry.
So, even though this was originally planned like over 10 years ago, you're going to do the same kind of community outreach?
We'll do the same outreach that we do on all of our projects. The sport court was originally laid out for adjacent to shot court, so we definitely want to check with the immediate neighbors and see exactly what type of sport court. Now, while it was originally sized for a tennis court, some people like basketball, some people like futsal, some people like, handball and other things. So we'll test what people want. It also showed a barbecue area and an entry plaza. I don't know if the folks still want an entry plaza, and so we'll test all of that with the community at the park and let them provide the input. And then there's enough money here to go into construction if that's what they want.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Teixeira. The North Side folks are going to be really happy. I mean, their parks are getting a lot of attention these days, so I know they were very appreciative to hear about Montague, so this is be even better, so thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So is there a motion and a second for approval of the appropriations?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any public discussion on this?
Thank you. Is this the next park that was on the list to come up to be taken care of? I couldn't find the list of parks that were in the queue, so I just want to see if this was the next one, which is wonderful. And was this the next one to be done, or is there maintenance on that, or can this money be used for maintenance? I mean, some of our parks are really, really, really in awful shape, and many of them are not ADA compliant. And I'm wondering if it's wonderful to get parks taken care of, but sorry, I'm really all for finally, it's been decades in getting things ADA compliant, and I think that should be a higher priority than, spending $400,000 on another new sport park. I think we ought to be doing what we should have done decades ago on getting things compliant. So can we really, before we allocate these funds, and I'm sure they're going to be allocated, because when you get up here and talk, you guys criticize San Jose for not listening to the public. You guys don't often listen either, which is just as frustrating. But I really think we should look at, are these funds being used as the next most important priority? And to me, meeting these ADA requirements of making these parks compliant should be a requirement, and we haven't been doing that properly or in a timely manner. So I would really sincerely ask we look at doing that first before we continue doing another park. So I had 3 questions, and I'd like to get them answered before you rubber stamp another proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Mr. Teixeira, if you'd like to come up and talk about the Mitigation Fee Act and the restrictions we have on that and about this Fuller Street Park.
So one of the questions is proper use of Mitigation Fee Act funds, acquisition and development of new park facilities. This would be a new park facility. In terms of what new park facilities do we have on our list that remains unfunded, this one, as I mentioned before, the park itself, I think, was designed and planned in 1997. That's 20 years ago. The sport court portion of it was put on an unfunded priority list in 2003. So yes, I take the comment very seriously that we're very delayed in bringing some of these development of those that were promised to the public in that area 17 years or 14 years ago at the least. So we're trying to speed that up. With regard to the comment about the next, and I think the person was referring to our playgrounds. That really was a priority that council had brought up during the budget process. So the playgrounds, next up that you have funded, just to remind everybody, will be next out at, we're doing Home Ridge, or Montague, Home Ridge, Bowers, Machado. Then there will be Agnews, which will be tagged onto the back end of Fuller Street. As I mentioned, we're looking at Dave Voll's design to work on both of those at the same time. So that's the list. And I believe if you're looking for them, if you're a member of the public, you go to the capital improvement projects budget. It's under finance tab for 17-18. And in there, 532 is Parks and Recreation. And then you can find what the 5-year plan is. And then again, as we've made mention in the budget process, as additional funding becomes available, we will be allocating those as best we can. Also in the November timeframe for your next budget cycle, we'll have completed the Kitchell Facility Condition Assessment Report, which then will give you a full wide-eye view of all of the items that need to be addressed in our Parks and Recreation system throughout the city. So stay tuned.
Thanks. We look forward to that report. Thank you for answering those questions. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor on that item, and that passes unanimously. Thank you. Reports of members and special committees.
Oh, yes. Is that us?
Councilmember Davis.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, am I on? Okay. That I attended the volunteer firefighters barbecue this weekend. It was great. Those guys know how to cook. And the other thing I wanted to acknowledge and thank, FEMA activated the USNR Task Force 3, and Deputy Chief J.D. Madden is a planning section chief, and he's in Florida, along with rescue specialist Captain Arnaldo and Captain Bozell, and medic specialist Captain Merrick, and driver engineer Walsh, and I wish them on their 20-day assignment and helping people in our community, and I wish them good luck, and I hope that they come back successful, and they have great stories to tell us of rescuing people, so I wanted to thank them from the council. I hope that you all agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Mahan.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that this Thursday, our own Rod Deardon, sorry, not junior, our own Rod Deardon Senior, is being awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award by the Santa Clara County League of Conservation Voters for his work in protecting and enhancing our environment. It's quite a prestigious award, and Rod certainly deserves it. And for once, I think Rod Jr. can say that he's proud to be Rod Sr.'s son, because I think lately Rod Sr.'s been saying he's proud to be Rod Jr.'s dad. But congratulations, Rod.
It's a mutual fan society.
That's right. And then speaking of emergency preparedness in light of what's happened in Texas and in Florida, I would like to suggest that we get a report, not immediately, but at some time, to both on how one of our largest, potentially largest centers of population, i.e. Levi Stadium, would be evacuated in the course of an emergency, but more importantly, how it could be used for sheltering in the case of an emergency. Because I think we owe it to our public to see how that public facility could be used in times that other parts of the country are facing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to tag on to what Councilmember Davis said, I also wanted to thank our fire department and the officers that have been deployed to help the people in Florida. Having lived in Tampa for 15 years and never experiencing a hurricane, but I know how important it is to know that you've got a plan in place. But fortunately, Tampa dodged a bullet, but at the same time, the rest of the state is going through some serious issues right now, and it's just good to know that my present hometown is helping my former home state, and I really appreciate that. And I will tell you that from sharing that information with friends and my sister who was evacuated from Tampa, knowing that knowing that people were coming to help them was a big relief, because they know that they have a lot ahead of them. So they really appreciated knowing that people from around the country were coming to assist them. So thank you very much for that. The other thing I wanted to share was last week, Community Director Andrew Crabtree and myself went to San Jose Airport, Mineta Airport, and had a very nice chat for about an hour with some gentlemen to talk about airport noise and how it's impacting our community, and not just the north side, but all of Santa Clara. So we had a very good discussion, got some very good information about fines and takeoffs and when they can and can't take off and curfews. And it was very interesting because it's a big issue right now, not just in Santa Clara, but in the surrounding communities. And so as a result, San Jose is yesterday, their Transportation and Environmental Committee met to put together an ad hoc committee to discuss how to deal with these issues not just in Santa Clara, but in the surrounding communities. So I sent a letter on behalf of Santa Clara yesterday because I was not able to attend the meeting, but it was received and made a part of the record. And going forward, back in October, the San Jose City Council will be discussing this, forming this committee, and inviting cities to come to the table to discuss these important issues. And it's a short-term committee, only 120 days, but they will be meeting with the FAA and coming up with some recommendations for the FAA to make some decisions about. And we're hoping that, we can get some issues resolved. And then going forward, there's another task force that has been put together through the Cities Association. Again, it's similar to what San Francisco did in San Mateo County to work on airport issues that were impacting San Mateo County. So the good news is that a similar task force is being formed with cities in the Bay Area. And I did attend a preliminary meeting last week, and going forward, that will be a more permanent committee, and the goal is to work on, as air traffic continues to grow and impact, our quality of life, our pollution, we're going to work together to come up with ways to just mitigate these concerns and just make our communities the best places that they can be. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Not seeing any other lights. City Manager, Executive Director report.
I just had one announcement. As we all know, the Art and Wine Festival is this weekend, and the city staff, all the city departments will be having a little booth within the Art and Wine Festival, and we encourage everybody to come by and meet staff and find out about the services that we offer. We have a little passport program, which we started last year, so that you collect your stamps and come to a specific booth and get a prize. So we look forward to meeting everybody, and hope we find everybody there enjoying themselves at the Art and Wine Festival this weekend.
Thank you. I know many of us will be volunteering there.
Yes,
we
we will.
do every year, so, and many staff people, so we'll see you all. It's a really fun event at Central Park. Reports of actions taken in closed session. City Attorney, I think we have a couple of items.
The City Council accepted the resignation of the current city manager effective, I think it's September 26th. And pinch hitting for him in the meantime until the new city manager shows up will be Ruth Shikata.
You agreed, right? Oh, good.
Twist your arm.
Thank you, Ruth. All right. Seeing no other action there, we have an adjournment this evening. We are asked to adjourn the September 12th meeting in memory of Teresa Terry Polk Turco. She's a sister of Buck Polk. Many of us know as a former trustee of the West Valley Mission Community College District Board, and also a principal and administrator in Santa Clara Unified School District. Terry was born on October 19, 1932 in Los Angeles, California. After high school, Terry entered the Order of the Sisters of Notre Dame and taught in Catholic elementary schools in Santa Clara and Salinas. She later left the order and graduated from San Jose State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Education. She continued to teach for several years. Terry was especially proud of her maternal heritage as a member of the Murphy family, as they were one of the original families to settle in the Santa Clara Valley. In 1976, Terry married her husband, John Turco. Terry and John enjoyed over 35 years of happiness together. Terry touched the lives of many as a cherished wife, aunt, sister, teacher, colleague, and friend. Terry is survived by her brother, Buck Polk, and her 28 nieces and nephews. So if we could have an adjournment in her memory.
Second.
It's a motion and a second. Lights on the motion, and that passes unanimously, and the meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming.